The link and login information is available on the district website. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the district website as soon as it is possible. Community input is encouraged and welcome. Input must be informational in nature and address the entire board rather than one particular board member. The Board of Education cannot engage in a discussion or debate in response, but we will take the information for review and direct the appropriate district employee to respond. Community input opportunities are available online. We received 3 community inputs online, and they were sent to all board members. And then they are also available at the district office at the time of our board meeting, and we have 2 people in the audience that would like to come forward for community input. So welcome, glad to have you. Do you guys want to step up together? You want to do that now? Right, yep. Now is our time for community input. So
this is like a dream come true, honestly. Do you want to have your microphone? Hi, my name is Patrick Eberts, and this is my son, Patrick Eberts, and we're just wanting to get involved a little bit more, I guess, organically in the curriculum that he's going to be going forth in school this year and presented to along with my other children. I have a total of 5 kids that I've raised in the 742 district, and 2 of them are just graduated. One's already graduated quite some time, and I have another son that's in 9th grade. My son Patrick's going to be a senior at Tech, and we want to thank you guys for your service and your selection and election of being on the school board. And Patrick motivated me to come here today because we just think it's important to let you know as public servants, which is what teachers and members of the school board are, serving our public interests. Our taxes pay for the monies that you receive and that the teachers have, and that it's a reflection of our desires of how we want to have our children be educated and how we'd like to have them be taken care of within the confines of the school year and the school day. Patrick has some concerns that he has yet to understand regarding potential restrictions for COVID safety this year, and how his education's changed in the last 16 months, I'd say, and it's changed for all of us, and we understand that it's really important for you guys to have a listening ear to what parents and members of the community care about when it comes to educating our children. So anyway, Patrick, was there something specific you want to talk about regarding COVID?
My mask. I don't like wearing a mask in school, and we should have the freedom and the right to wear what we want to wear for our face, and yeah.
Yeah. So like a lot of families, we've been touched with COVID-19, the SARS-CoV virus, and Patrick's actually had the disease and has natural immunity. I've been vaccinated myself, and so he's concerned about wearing a mask in the coming year. He feels with taking in account things that the Center for Disease Control has to say as far as safety goes for kids, the chances of being a good vector for the virus is extremely small. The chance of spreading the disease is extremely small, and the potential for having a long-term effect or death is next to nothing. And so he likes to be able to have the freedom to decide whether or not he's going to wear a mask or not, especially since he has immunity right now, natural immunity, as I have immunity as long as the vaccine's going to be around. So that's one of the concerns we have. And so was there any? So he wants it to be able to be his decision and not to be relegated, because as you know, there's lots of studies out, scientific studies like through the Cleveland Clinic, and 52,000 employees and individuals that were studied with having been exposed to the virus, or having had the virus, or having had the vaccine, and the efficacy of masks has been very minimal, unless you have a specific kind of a mask like the N95 mask that they have in hospitals. Other than that, they don't. He doesn't believe they does a lot of mitigation for safety purposes and things, but and there's been so much misinformation and disinformation, and so I think as a member of our society, a free society, feels like he'd be able to choose whether or not he's vaccinated, since he already has natural immunity, and also whether or not he needs to have to wear a mask. Was that it, Patrick?
Yes, that was it.
He's wearing a mask tonight because he said he wants to wear a mask. I said, well, why are you wearing a mask tonight? He says, because it's my choice. I'd like to wear a mask, even though he has antibodies that are protecting him and stuff. So we've all had an opportunity to have a minor in virology and epidemiology these last 12 months, and so whether we wanted to or not. So he wanted to express that, because we know you're the decision makers of how our schools will be brought forward as far as safety goes, and the environment in which the kids are having. And so because of the fortunate thing that young people don't have a danger, a true danger when it comes to COVID-19, with very few exceptions, unless you have some comorbidity like you have leukemia or something where you don't have any immunity. He wants to be able to have that freedom. I encourage him to be able to express those kinds of views and those thoughts and his desire for freedom. So that's one of the main subjects that he wanted to talk about, and I wanted to help him express. Am I helping out with Patrick?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. He talks to me about this, and I encourage him to express what it is, but he's the one who actually is going to school and stuff. The other thing that we had been talking a lot about, and I know this is a hot button for a lot of people, and so you could probably guess, but the whole concept of what's called critical race theory, which to me is another version of, as far as I understand it, trying to combat racism with racism, where you're dividing our society and dividing our students by their skin color and their ethnicity, rather than trying to bring people together and saying, trying to identify people as oppressors if you're of one. If you have a certain number of melanocytes, and a victim or an oppressed as another. And I just don't, I hope that's not going to be part of the curriculum or any directives that's going to be planned for this year for the school system, because I think like Abraham Lincoln said, a house united cannot stand. And when you divide people into little sects or groups based on our skin rather than what brings us together, we're Americans, we're St. Cloudians, we're Eagles or Tigers, depending on which school you happen to go to. I think that's a mistake, and the concepts of diversity, inclusion, and equity are, I think, not what makes America great. I think the things that make America great are things like equality and meritocracy, where you're advanced by your ability to do things in a positive way and earn your way to success, not be guaranteed a success, have an equal chance, not an equal outcome, and so. And I don't know what your guys' philosophy is, or what your thoughts are, or what the curriculum's agenda is to be. But for me, as a parent and and you as civil servants, and I know I'm not alone in my thoughts. I think it's really important to make sure that you understand that school for me is a place where you should learn fundamental facts about history, fundamental facts about mathematics, science, the STEM knowledge, things that we're having a hard time getting good competition when it comes to other parts of the world with our education, and not trying to teach morality. Morality to me should be taught in the home. The concept of right and wrong needs to be taught by parents, not by educators, because that's a subjective concept. Some people might think it's okay to propagate abstinence when it comes to your relationships with somebody, and somebody says no, that's okay. We don't teach that, or you talk about things like right to life or the right to choose. Those things to me are moral decisions that schools shouldn't teach, and to say one activity is racist, another activity is not, or any kind of a separation or prejudgment of somebody by the color of their skin, I think is a mistake, and not the place of educators. So I believe in that being the responsibility of students, parents, and their families to teach them, not the school. So I hope that's not going to be a part of the curriculum this year, because I think once again, where we're divided, that's where we can't stand. And I also think it's important to judge people always by the content of their character, not by the color of skin, and to make some kind of a prejudgment, say because you grew up a certain way, you have advantages or disadvantages, because nobody really knows. That to me are individual decisions, and those are things that historically that might be the way things were 50, 60 years in the past, but I think in America in 2021 today, it's important to focus on equality and things not like equity, and things that bring us together, and not things that take us apart. So that, I guess, without being paid by the word, which I'm not, it might seem like I am, is what I wanted to finish sharing with you guys. And these are things that are reflected by my children. We talk about these kinds of things, and we don't make prejudgments that there's any kind of agenda or indoctrination, but we want to know that some of those kinds of things seep into our our institutions that we have, and we think that's not at least a place in the school. Once again, morality should be taught at home, not in the school. I want my kids to know as much about the world, and not so much about other people's opinions. Okay, so that's it. I hope that was okay and received. Nobody's offended by what I had to say or what Patrick had to say, but we want to know that part of our feeling is that you need to know the will of those that are representing you as parents and students and as taxpayers. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming forward and finding us and speaking out. We appreciate hearing community voices.
Yeah.
And just follow it up here. Go ahead.
So there's usually not comment by admin, and so there really isn't. So Mr. Eberts, good evening. But I'm really here to say something to Patrick, if that's okay, Patrick. And
That's okay.
I figured it would be, being that we know each other a little bit. So with that being said, I heard your dad talk about the term decision makers. So at this table, you have decision makers. But Patrick, I've always appreciated the fact that you know how to contact or express yourself with decision makers, correct?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'm going to keep holding you, or not keep holding you, but keep asking from you, when you have thoughts, when you have ideas, when you have suggestions, you know how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Whether it's thinking about the masks or the weather.
Yeah.
So with that being said, good to see you, sir.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
Thank
you
you
guys for
both.
all your service, by the way, sincerely, and I know it's for the love of caring about our public's education that you guys do what you do, and so thanks for that, and God bless you all. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night. This meeting is now called to order. It is July 21st, 2021, and the time is 6:45 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Les, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Les, will you please call roll?
Scott Andresen,
I'm here.
Al Dahlgren,
Here.
Zach Dorhold. Here. Les Green is here. Shannon Hawes,
Here.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Here.
Monica Segura Swartz.
Here.
The following board members are, I'm sorry, everybody's here in person. That's good. The following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Mike Rivard, and by the way, welcome, Mike. It's your first board meeting. Thank you. Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Lori Putnam. Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalarud. Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy Flynn Bowe. Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, Lori Posch. Executive Director of Operations, Gary Ganji. Media Technicians, Paul Novak and Gordy Scott. And the custodian on site tonight is Steve Hain. Following cabinet members are virtually present. Director of Community Engagement and Communications, Tammy DeLand. Executive Director of Research, Assessment, and Enrollment, Donna Roper. Donna's new also, by the way. And Executive Assistant, Jan McGuire. I'm done.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work. I'd like to know if I have to do that every meeting, I should get more pay or something.
We'll give you a pen.
Okay, next up, I'm looking for approval of tonight's agenda.
So move.
I have a motion by Scott and a second by Al. Les, can you please call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold. Yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. Does any member wish tonight to remove an item from the consent agenda? Appreciate that. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes, meetings of June 2nd, 2021 and June 16th, 2021. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $7,848,953.04. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards and donations. Item E, approval of monthly financial report for May. Item F, approval of monthly treasurer's report for May. Item G, quarterly expenditures for board members. Item H, approval of 2021-2022 membership renewal. in the Minnesota School Boards Association, MSBA. Item I, 10-year long-term facilities maintenance plan. Item J, bid award for milk. Item K, district office HVAC project, change order totaling negative $5,400. Item L, controlled entrance project change orders totaling negative $12,709.54. And last, item M, McKinley elevator project change order totaling $12,036.57. Looking for approval of tonight's consent agenda as read.
So moved.
I have a motion by Natalie and a second by Scott. Les, can you please call roll?
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz. Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt.
Yes.
Les Green is yes.
Thank you, Les. Okay, first up for action items. Tonight is approval of the 2021-2022 Minnesota State High School League membership renewal and the Why We Play video presented tonight by Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair Hawes, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Jett, guests, and our I'm going to share with you the required presentation from the Minnesota State High School League. As you know, we must provide you with this overview and video and ask that you approve continued membership in this organization. However, because activities are vital to our students and community, we did tweak the presentation just a little bit to ensure to include our students and our voices. So you will be hearing that tonight. Prior to moving on with the presentation, however, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our newly hired Apollo Activities Director, Alex Badger. Alex has served as a teacher and head boys swim and dive coach at Apollo for many years. She was instrumental in creating a swim camp for elementary and middle level students that serves as a model for how to grow programs in this district. Her passion and innovation and commitment to ensuring all students find an activity that meets their hopes and dreams is what made us really excited about her, and we are glad that you have joined our team. So welcome, Alex. And I also want to acknowledge Dave Langaroo, Tech Activities Director, who has resigned from our school district effective July 30th. Dave has been an incredible leader in this community, and we are deeply grateful for his commitment to students, activities, and our community, and Dave will be greatly missed. So, because they both have played vital roles and will play vital roles in our activities, I just wanted to make sure to give them the acknowledgement that is their due. So. And as you know, now we'll move on with our presentation. Each year, the State High School League provides a video for the school board to preview, so we'd like to share that with you now.
By the time students reach middle school, their families have already spent an incredible amount of time, energy, and resources on their child's sports experiences.
Private coaches travel to pressure to specialize in a single sport.
The reality is less than 3% of our athletes will ever go on to play college, and less than 1% of our athletes will ever play professionally.
This means 97% of students will have a terminal experience. When they graduate, their competitive playing days are over. So what's the purpose?
The purpose is the human growth and development of our students and connecting them to caring adults in their learning community.
For this to happen, it takes leadership and a community aligned around this purpose.
The purpose of a caring adult in students' lives has never been more important. Students face an incredible amount of pressure. There's peer pressure and social pressure and academic pressure and pressure to perform on the playing field or in the arts area. And what that's resulting in is a mental health crisis where kids are facing anxiety and depression. There's a study called Hardwired to Connect that identifies 3 fundamental needs that every human being has. The need to belong, the need to have some type of moral development, and we define moral as relationships to other people, and then that base community, which is really being held accountable to a set of expectations and boundaries. Athletic and activity programs can really provide a caring community for students, for them to be connected. It takes connection that supports students in a
is to foster athletes.
Front-facing public person, really leading the charge for all of the things that happen within that program that, again, are so beneficial to the student.
A strong activities director or athletic director is going to have the pulse of their school, is going to influence and impact the students through others, and create that experience that we're looking for all kids.
In my particular role as the activities director, I need to work with my principal and my superintendent, and I need to work with my school board to understand what activities are, what they should feel like. Student athletes, to train coaches, work with our student body.
The value of a strong activities director for the entire system is something that I can't put a price tag on.
We've got 3 brand new board members.
And it's important for school board members to understand the purpose of our activities and athletic programs so that they remember their role in supporting our work, in supporting our staff, and in supporting our activities director and what he does.
We are really here in every athlete's life. I think the most important thing I do is connect students. The school day connects students to meaningful adult.
We want to have a winning record, but what's most important than that is having a winning culture.
It's all necessarily equate to winning. Being able to watch, I got better. I did the best that I could. I want to continue. I know more about myself, and I'm more prepared for whatever might come my way in the future.
We have to align our communities in order for athletic administrators and coaches to be supported.
Our school board knows that we're about more than just wins and losses, that we're part of the educational program and part of the educational system. It's great to be able to show up at work every day, knowing your school board, your superintendent, and your principal, and that you have the ability to support athletes, participants, and their families. It's very important that you have all of those important stakeholders in alignment and that they understand what the common language is and what it means to have a successful experience.
My purpose as a captain is to people that'll help people down the road.
The adult about engaging. I may, and I may then later do it in my role as the softball coach, but the experience that the kids get, that alignment that is tied through, is that we are here to impact your life in a positive way.
There's no more rewarding feeling for me as an activities director to hear them say that they became a better person through their participation in our activities.
I think the greatest thing that a school board can do is to define success, to publicly state that here's how we are going to define success within our school community. Are we growing and developing better people? Are we modeling the kind of character that we want our students to leave our lives with and go into the world with? Awareness is critical. We have to be aware of the purpose of why sports are part of our school community. And finally, not only do we have to hold our coaches accountable, we have to hold our school communities accountable to the transformative power of what sport can be, and that is connecting students to caring adults in their learning community.
Along with the Minnesota State High School League, when we talk with our students, coaches, families, ADs, and community, we all know our goal is to win. Winning is validation of the hard work and effort put into mastering their sport or their activity. Also, as you heard from the video, while we prepare, plan, and play to win, winning is not our purpose. Our purpose is teaching and learning. Our purpose is growth and development of students and connection to caring adults. But don't take their word for it or my word for it. You can take it from the words of our own coaches and players. And I don't know if you can, I hate reading slides, but I don't know if you can see this, so I am going to read it to you. And the first is from Coach Benson, who is our Tech head football coach. My mission and the goal of the entire Tech football program is to use our game as a tool to build championship people. Discipline, sacrifice, selflessness, and character are the heart of our effort, habit, mantra, and our 104-year Tech football tradition. There is no other game that brings people of every color, creed, race, and religion together like football. The skills that make a great football player transfer seamlessly into success in the classroom and community. I approach every day with a commitment to preparing our kids for the big game, life. Student TS, who is heading into 6th grade at North Junior High School. I play sports so I can be with my friends and get exercise doing something I like. From AD Badger at Apollo High School. The power of activities is life-changing. The relationship that these young adults build with their coaches and their teammates can change the trajectory of their lives forever. My fervent hope is that each student has the opportunity to grow and develop through the incredible activities that our district offers. From the Apollo High School Boys Swim and Dive coaches collectively. As coaches, our goals are to develop and improve athletes' technical skills and abilities, provide personal and social development for lifelong skills, and create a fun and enjoyable environment for athletes. We believe that hard work and competition should be fun. Hard work starts at practice, which sets up athletes for success. We can define success in a number of ways: improved technique, personal best times and scores, outstanding supportive teammates, greater consistency, and personal enjoyment of the sport. From Coach Heine, who is a St. Cloud girls basketball coach. I coach to help student athletes grow as human beings. Athletics provides many life lessons such as commitment, responsibility, and teamwork, and to be able to provide these students with an avenue to learn and grow as members of our community through sports is what it is all about. And finally, from student JH, who is going into 10th grade at Tech. I like to play high school sports in St. Cloud because not only is it fun, but it prepares me for my future. These teams have become family to me, and we have created a bond that is hard to find anywhere else. There is no better environment than being around some of your best friends playing the sport you love. Thank you for giving us this chance to share the State High School League information with you and to hear from our own school community about why they play. And tonight we are asking for board approval for continued membership in the Minnesota State High School League, and I welcome any questions.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for a motion to approve. Comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just make some comments. Every year we watch that video. It's a little bit different, seems like every year, but it used to have the Moundsview Mustangs, I know that. But I always find it interesting, and I kind of wish that the Minnesota State High School League and the Minnesota State Legislature would all have the same fervor for activities. And when you look at a district such as ours that suffer, I know you've all heard this a million times, but I still like to say it, but when you have a special education cross-subsidy the size of ours, the damage that it does to a district or the harm that it does to a district generally comes in the areas of the budget where you have the opportunity or the ability to reduce budgets, and one of those would be activities. And I just find it very, very sad that a district like ours, because we have the number 2 or 3 highest per student special education cross subsidy in the state, we have to take that money out of regular education. And then when you compare us to districts that have low special education cross subsidies, our investment per student in activities is significantly lower. I think that the school district like Ricori has almost 3 times the budget per student in activities. And what that turns into is it turns into a really robust activities program and a ton of community support for those activities because you have the ability to bring it to the community. So the legislature they're the ones that need to make changes to make activities as important as they can possibly be. But it shouldn't be that some students in the state are underfunded in activities while other students can flourish in activities because they have 2 or 3 times the funding. And look around the state, you can see which districts have that funding. It's really sad. And I think that, we really should make, say, a public thank you to LEAF, who is an outside organization that has stepped in and they donate thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to St. Cloud activities. And sadly, they wouldn't have to do that if the state properly funded us. We'd be able to use those LEAF dollars for educational opportunities and growing things there. But I just really wish that at some point the state would get their stuff together and start funding schools so that some districts aren't at a complete disadvantage when it comes to things like activities, music and arts, all of the things that aren't requirements of education, and we would be able to be on an equitable and equal playing field with other districts in the state. So those are my comments.
Go ahead. Oh, Monica?
I just wanted to acknowledge that I agree with what Al said. So, well said, Al. Thank you.
Scott?
It'd be nice if we had more money to put into the arts, to theater. But special education comes first. It's required by the state. That's all.
Les?
I don't disagree with Al or anybody. I think that one of the things that we have to recognize is that we do have a district that has probably made very good use of limited resources and has provided substantial activities for kids along, and LEAF is a part of it. And I remember when that started way back when George Torrey and the crew funded the activities at North. So while the cross subsidy creates an issue, I want to make sure that parents understand that their children have opportunity in activities here. We could provide more, but I don't believe we're lacking in the sense of some kids are being denied something that they could have.
I agree with you 100%, Les, and I wasn't putting down our activities program. I was just saying it's very difficult to have as robust of a program as some of these other schools have. And as public, I mean, it gets into the marketing of these things and just driving community support, driving community participation, getting the whole town excited about things. It takes support to be able to do that. But I do believe that we have a administration that is fully committed to having a very strong and robust athletic program, and not athletic, activities program and programming within this district. So it's not a shot at our district at all. It's just, boy, what we could do if we were properly funded would be incredible.
Good points.
Not to go a different direction, but I want to acknowledge or say thank you to Dr. Putnam and the activities department for putting our faces or our spin on that video. I'm probably going to get in trouble, but I'm getting older and I can't take certain things. And so I'm one of the most senior tenured superintendents. And when I watch that video, I start to get angry. So thank you for making sure that you put our students and express what the world looks like in that video. Because you talk about the legislature and the high school league, and they're all wrapped into one. And that video lights my fire. And I'll just leave it at that.
So with that, I would move that we renew our membership in the Minnesota for the 2021-2022 school year.
Okay, I have a motion by Al and a second by Les. And then Les, will you please call roll?
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold. Les Green is yes. Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the co-ops branding presented tonight by Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, and this is an action item tonight.
Good evening, Chair Haas. I'd like to invite AP Skellerud and AP Kenzie and AD Badger to come on up. It is our pleasure tonight to discuss 742 activities with you. Specifically, we'll be sharing the process we use to decide which teams we are recommending to be co-opted and the process and outcome of our co-op branding process. And I would be remiss just to make sure that, that everybody knows these folks. I introduced Alex already. Molly Kenzie is the assistant principal, one of the assistant principals at Tech, and she has stepped in and is doing a wonderful job helping to support during the transition time. And then, of course, you know AP Skellerud, who is at Apollo. And so I'm very grateful. Although I'm the one talking tonight, I'm very grateful that they are here and will gladly help answer any questions. And not here this evening, our principals Fisher and Harris and AD Langerud, and they also were instrumental in this work. So I want to acknowledge them. Foremost, as we get started, we want to answer the question, why co-op? Just so that everybody is clear about what this means and why we made these decisions. Schools and districts choose to co-op typically when there are limited participation numbers. Sufficient numbers of participants are necessary to ensure safety and opportunity for all of our 742 students. It's important to note as we talked this evening that some of the teams that we're talking about were already co-opted, just with other districts. For instance, Apollo boys tennis was co-opted with Sauk Rapids Rice, and so it's not as though this is a new co-op for that team. However, we are doing recommending a different pairing. Our coaches and building and district leadership decided that whenever possible, we wanted to co-op with our sister school, with either Apollo or Tech rather than another school district. This allows us to put strategies in place to build our own programs with the intent and expectation that we will soon have enough participants to host teams at both Apollo and Tech. At this time, for the recommended co-ops, participation numbers had fallen to the point where there weren't enough high school students to make a 9th, JV, and varsity team. When that happens, we have to make a choice between eliminating one of those levels of play or bringing up middle-level students. It's essential that student athletes have the time to build skills to participate successfully, and that means playing at the appropriate level. It's also really important, though we talked about winning not being our purpose, success is important. And we want to be able to be competitive in our conferences and to be able to match conference play. We don't want to have to combine and only have a varsity and JV team when the folks around us are able to have the participants to have a 9th JV and varsity, because then our students aren't getting that option to compete and to build their skills. And again, although we are recommending co-opting these teams now, we do have every hope and intention of building separate teams at Tech and Apollo, and we're investing the human and fiscal capital now to make that a reality. So tonight, we'll be asking the board to approve the following co-ops between Apollo and Tech High School. In fall, girls tennis. In winter, girls basketball. In spring, boys tennis, baseball, and softball. Of these, tennis was already co-opted with either other districts or schools. And please make no mistake, we are not making these recommendations lightly or without extensive thought and discussion. Prior to making these recommendations, we completed a review of participation numbers, not only at the high school, but at the middle school feeder teams. We took a look at community sports teams, such as Waite Park Baseball, and we looked at the participation in community ed courses. Our ADs talked with our coaches about their thoughts, and as a team, we collaboratively decided to recommend this course of action. We've stated that our goal is to have active, thriving activities across our district. Activities, not just sports, but all activities are vital to a well-rounded education, student growth and development, and feelings of belonging and community. To make this goal more of a reality, we've identified strategies to increase student participation in activities. These were generated through shared conversation with coaches, parents, students, and community members. You can see that the strategies are varied and include efforts such as adding middle-level activities coordinators, to build programs K-8, transportation at the middle and high school levels to activities after school. So for instance, if a co-op's team's practice location is at Apollo and we have students from South and Tech participating, then they would, or North, they would receive the transportation to their practice site, as well as a transportation home after school, and that is new. So we're really excited about that fall pilot. And we've also set participation goals for coaches and advisors. We're asking for a 5% increase. And again, not just in sports, but in all of our activities. I won't read all of the rest of the strategies, but you can see those here on the screen. There are additional strategies that are currently under review. Those are the ones that we've already committed to, and these are the ones we're still developing. And those would be to capitalize on newly approved state high school league sports, such as girls wrestling. Not that our girls aren't able to participate currently, but they've approved that as its own activity. Taking a look at providing sixth grade programs for 7-12 sports, such as tennis, wrestling, cross country, on-site physicals, and then those elementary sports samplers, because we know the program building begins with our littlest ones in the elementary schools. And now I'm going to transition to the co-op branding process. So another strategy that we're employing is to be as clear, inclusive, and transparent in our decision-making as possible. And that's why we formed a co-op branding process. We knew that it is imperative that all of our co-op teams, including our existing co-ops, have a common brand, including name, colors, and logo. We need each of our students on our co-op teams to feel like they belong and have an identity that they can claim regardless of which hallway they're walking in each high school. So to make this possible, we convened a team of over 25 student athletes, family members, coaches, and community members. The team was tasked with recommending a co-op name, colors, logo, and to review uniform designs. Additionally, because our high school teams represent more than just our district, they represent our community, we sought public input on names and colors. We partnered with a professional branding company and along with the communication department ensured that there was consistency of our 742 brand. So regarding community participation, we had over 102 submissions for co-op name and colors. You can see on the screen that through our social media, website, and press, we gathered significant feedback and generated awareness of this process across our community. Our co-op branding team held 3 meetings over 6 hours of deliberation to get to consensus. And our branding team we did come to consensus. That was a commitment we made on the new co-op name, colors, and logos. And we are excited to share that with you now. Oh, it was 6 hours. It was People have a lot of feelings about activities. I've learned that right quick, as they should. Yeah. So our co-op name will be St. Cloud Crush. And our colors will be royal and orange on either black, gray, or white backgrounds. What we heard from our public and from our committee, that it's important that our co-op name reflect the history and tradition of the St. Cloud community in relationship to granite and the granite industry, hence the crush. Is also very important to our students. And they were very vocal that they didn't want to just be known as St. Cloud X. So they don't want to just be St. Cloud tennis. They don't want to be just St. Cloud basketball. They want an identity. They want the announcer to be able to announce St. Cloud Crush, not just St. Cloud. So that was super important to them. So Tech has the Tigers, Apollo has the Eagles, and now our co-ops are the Crush. Our students, our coaches actually went back to the students and asked them to help design our uniforms. So here's a sample of the high school girls' home and away jerseys. You can see the black or white as their background with the royal and orange. Our home jerseys will read Crush. So where the St. Cloud is, that will actually say Crush. And they will read St. Cloud, as you see here, when playing away, to make sure that we incorporate that identity, but are also clear when we're traveling. And we are still working with our branding team to develop the logo, so that's not quite ready to show you tonight. We do have some ideas about where we want that to go, but it was really important that we take the time to get that logo right, rather than try to rush it. And fortunately, those logos won't be appearing on the uniform, so we're not holding up the uniform ordering process because we know time is of the essence there. But we will get that, we will be able to show that to you guys and the public as soon as we get that ready. And so before I wrap up tonight, I want to say thank you to the students, parents, community members, coaches, and administration who volunteered so much of their time to develop our co-op brand. We are extremely excited about the outcome. And I also want to say thank you to this board for supporting our activities in our district. We are very fortunate to have you advocating for our students. So again, tonight we are asking for board approval on the 5 new co-opt sports: girls tennis, girls basketball, boys tennis, softball, and baseball. And we welcome any questions you have before taking board action. Thank you.
Scott?
We have co-ops with other districts. Ending those, are we continuing those, or how does that work?
Thank you. Right. If these are approved, the remaining co-ops with other district that we have would be between Tech swimming, boys swimming would be currently with Ricori. We did look at combining that, and Cathedral, thank you. We did look at combining that, and the way the numbers worked out, it wasn't the best choice for our students. And then currently Nordic Ski, boys and girls, is still combined with Sauk Rapids Rice. And adaptive, and that's why they're here. Takes a village, people. Doesn't take the village people, it takes the village people. Go ahead, you guys, what did I miss?
Gymnastics. And adaptive.
Are with other districts?
No, just those are the other.
Okay, I think the question was other districts. No, please, I appreciate that. The other districts are those 2 activities, but we are, of course, co-opt with Cathedral and Granite City Baptist for other schools. Absolutely. Good question.
I got confused on that. So the swimming is still, it is or is not Ricori?
They're gonna. I don't know how to do this. My understanding is that the Tech co-op is going to remain. Sorry, I've lost my voice a little bit. I'm not the best person to do this. The Tech boys swimming is going to remain with Cathedral and Ricori. They're not going to become the St. Cloud Crush. If we decide in the future that we'd like to co-op the 2 boys swimming teams, then they'll become the St. Cloud Crush. And I think that's why this is such a great process, because if there is a change in numbers in the future. Now we have a process set up. Now we have a way to co-op teams in the future. We have a more unified process. Before it was kind of helter-skelter all over the place. It was very easy to get lost in the process. Teams were kind of doing the best they could to make the best of a situation. But now we have a really very unified way to make sure that we're representing our students, representing our community, representing our schools. We've got those colors. They looks a great uniform. Super excited about it.
Al?
I noticed when I was looking at the television screen up there that there's 3 girls sports and 2 boys sports were listed on there. Are there any Title IX considerations that come in when you co-op, or is it still that you're offering the sport so you're just fine?
That's a great question. I actually had an opportunity to talk to Eric Martins at the high school league a little bit about that when we were having these conversations. One thing I would point out is that a female athlete can participate in any sport. So for example, if they wanted to go out for baseball, they would. So combining these sports, because our numbers are dictating that to create that levels, we will still be providing the same amount of opportunities. There won't be any less opportunities for students. I would say the best way to describe this, if someone asks you, it'll be more appropriate opportunities. You heard the comment being made that middle school students aren't going to be pulled out to play 9th or JV anymore. They'll be playing middle school against middle schoolers. Now, with that being said, we have an acceleration process. If there's a student that, if the parents and the activity director at both the middle school and the high school and the head coach agree that this 7th grader should be playing varsity basketball, that can still happen. But it's not simply going to be these 10 students are going to come up because now that makes us have the right amount. We're trying to create the appropriate level 7 through 12, and we believe this is the right step to do that.
I have a couple questions. About transportation, you said that they would get transportation home. Do you mean to their home school or to the home?
We mean to their home. However, we are transporting to within 2 blocks of their home, so not door to door, but door to neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. Now, next question is, so say, I'm thinking of like girls, or maybe basketball. Are the spaces so limited? Will this co-op team, will the Crush team, are there basketball practices, or is it too early to tell? Will they all be after school, or do we ever have to have them practice at 6 o'clock at night?
We do have to have, with facilities, typically there's a team that practices first and a team that practices second, and they coordinate that between coaches and activities directors. Then once games starts, it really works itself out, because then if there's games, then it automatically happens. As far as what that's going to look like as the practices, that'll be worked out with the activities director that's overseeing the co-op. They'll be working with them to make sure we'll utilize our facilities in a way that will make sense, so that students are able to trying to do straight from after school to practice to home the best we can.
More work going into that, but thank you very much for making that work, because that's challenging. So, Scott?
We currently have Apollo and Tech together in gymnastics. Now, are they going to become the Crush? And what's
Yes.
Cathedral got to say about it?
Actually, Cathedral was part of our process. So they, activity director Keenan came to all of our meetings and was absolutely supportive of our name. And I think for our students to be able to have a common identity actually feels really good, because they do feel like one team. When they go back to their school, they can also have that identity. But as a co-op, it feels Cathedral was also quite excited about the process and the outcome.
Monica?
So I didn't understand the Crush when it's like you just mentioned Cathedral that they're okay and they're going to become the Crush, but the one with Rocori is not. Because what? So why they don't, and when do they do?
So if there's a co-op between Apollo and Tech, that's when it would become the St. Cloud Crush because it's a crosstown co-op. But because of a legacy, Tech has already had a co-op with Rocori and Cathedral, and they've elected not to break up that co-op. But because the Apollo boys swimming numbers are still really good, we didn't want to combine those two teams because it's a complicated process, but it makes the Apollo team less competitive when we get to those post-conference meets. Does that answer your question? No? We don't want to do we don't want to do a Tech Apollo co-op between those two boys teams. And it's only the Tech Apollo co-ops that makes a St. Cloud Crush team.
So I can add to that. Anytime, if I understand it correctly, if Tech are combined, if they're part of the co-op, it's the Crush, no matter who else is involved in that co-op with us. But in the one that you talked about, you heard Tech, Rocori, and Cathedral. We're missing Apollo, so that's not the Crush. But if Tech and Apollo are involved, it is the Crush, and anybody that's part of it is part of the Crush. How'd I do? You taught me well.
That's extremely important branding strategy.
Anyone else looking for a motion? Are we approving both the branding and the co-ops? Is that what we're doing? Just the co-ops?
Just the co-ops.
Okay. Oh, because we're not going to approve the branding.
I move that we accept the co-ops. Approve the co-ops. Yes, that's a good word. Thank you. As presented.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion by Scott and a second by Zach. Les, can you please call roll?
Monica Zagira Schwartz,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold. Yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, approval of membership in Association of Metropolitan School Districts, AMSD, for the 2021-2022 school year, presented tonight by Willie Jett, Superintendent of Schools.
Good evening, Chair Hawes and members of the board. At one of the last meetings, I was asked to give a little background information as it relates to AMSD, and so I'm just going to do that this evening. So tonight I'd like to provide you with an overview of the history, the purpose, and benefits of our membership in the Association of Metro School Districts, otherwise known as AMSD. St. Cloud Area School District 742 has been a member of AMSD since 2009. While we were the first district outside of the 7-county metropolitan area to join, Rochester and Duluth have since followed our lead. Several of our former and current board members, Bruce Henches and Zach Dorholt, served on the AMSD Legislative Committee in past years, and AMSD leadership still maintains connections with a former board member, Mr. Jerry Von Korf. The Association of Metropolitan School Districts represents 42 kindergarten through 12th grade school districts, 5 intermediate and cooperative districts, and 2 integration districts. AMSD member school districts enroll more than 1/2 of all public school students in Minnesota. The mission of AMSD is to advocate for metropolitan school districts and advance legislation that supports student achievement. AMSD stands ready to assist state policymakers by providing current research and data to help them make informed decisions. Membership benefits for a district such as ours, or Rochester, or Duluth, are important. As you know, our district is unique in that we are located in central Minnesota and surrounded by school districts that are much smaller, have homogeneous populations, and experience challenges unlike ours. We have much more in common with many metro districts than our neighbors. Because of this reality, AMSD membership is helpful to our exec team because they have the opportunity to attend meetings and collaborate with other district leaders facing issues similar to ours. Membership during the pandemic was exceptionally helpful in this regard because we could learn from and partner with other districts similar in size and scope. And lastly, AMSD advocates for issues important to us at the state legislature. Their main focus this year was to pass legislation that stabilized school budgets and ensured opportunities for high achievement for all students. Two of these key platforms focused on EL funding and special education. And as you're well aware, legislation relating to these areas impacts us greatly, as does metro area districts. Now, just so you know, in that is part our perspective, and that is part AMSDC supplying us with information. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that. What I was asked to do, what we were asked to do, was gather the who, what, where, why, when of AMSD. AMSD, I quit. I can't get that out of my mouth. And so we were just asked to provide that for the board, because I know there was some thoughts about that. So I just making sure that we shared that. And with that, that concludes my AMSDC. Did I do it right? Yep. Report.
So opening it up for discussion, Scott?
I was under the impression that AMSD was not as concerned about cross subsidy as affects our district, that they're much more concerned about getting their formula increase rather than helping out with special ed. Is that correct?
Zach, do you have that answer?
Technically, no. That Minnesota School Board Association, right, which is the other big kind of arm representing school districts and boards, zero input on it. But we, including AMSD, inserted language delivered by yours truly to beef this up, and recognizing that not all AMSD member districts have the same problem as we do. But when I saw their platform, it was just asking for an increase in the special education subsidy. So we changed it because we have clout within this organization to, at minimum, increase special education funding to a level sufficient to prevent the cross subsidy from growing in the next biennium, and develop and implement a plan to close the cross subsidy in 5 years. So they just hopped on a meeting and said, will you accept this, your platform? And zero objections. So yeah, but that's how we as a member contribute to this group. But yeah, it's not the top priority, but it's top 5. And because of the work that board members and previous have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Scott there. I see a number of things with AMSD that I don't get too excited about. One is that they mainly consist of outside or outer ring Twin Cities suburbs. And outer ring Twin Cities suburbs don't have the funding issues. Most and many of them have been able to pass operating levies within their district and have had very stable funding. So when they look at funding their districts, they're looking for the biggest formula increase that they can possibly get, because that's going to benefit them the most. And if they had their way, and what they're going to advocate for is going to go down to the legislature and say, we want everything put on the formula and don't worry about the other stuff. And I'm sorry, but to say that they grabbed our platform, which was to not have any increase in the special education cross subsidy, that isn't really advocating for special education funding in districts that have been harmed by that funding, which most of them haven't. And so I don't know that AMSD always works in our best interest. I think oftentimes AMSD is a very strong lobbying platform that works against our best interests and do more harm to us sometimes than, and maybe I shouldn't say more harm than good, because I also understand the ability to work with other districts and the ability to partner with and cooperate with those districts in other efforts. But I don't think that AMSD always puts our best interest, and they don't, of course they don't. That, as I said, they're 42 districts, mainly outer ring suburban districts that don't have special education cross-subsidy problems. Is Minneapolis and St. Paul in that, and are they strong in that?
So I can't talk about Minneapolis because I never witnessed their superintendent on the call. But I do know Joe Gothard has been on the call when I've been on the call. So I'm going to, I think the answer to that is yes. I don't know about Ed Graff from Minneapolis, so I won't talk about Minneapolis, but I'm almost positive St. Paul is.
Can we form some subcommittees and have St. Cloud, Duluth, Rochester, or Wilmer to lobby within that group?
Wait a minute, I saw some commercial the other day. Anything is possible. No, nobody knows that commercial.
But anyway, my point is, I do have issues with AMSD. I don't think that it's always just an automatic, hey, this is the best thing, and we should just join and be happy. I do feel that they need to hear that we have some real issues that need to be addressed, and that they should be lobbying. It can't hurt any one of those districts to lobby for full funding on special education, but they don't seem to want to do it.
And so I'll cut to that committee piece. There are moments in time where you will see a faction of us have certain conversations saying, this is important for us, but you hear how it's maybe not at the forefront for others. And when you say there's a reason that they might not make it a strong push, because how much does it benefit their district? And that's what you were getting to. That's what you're getting at. But just so you know, there are moments in time where we, as certain districts that have real similar thoughts and needs, you'll see us together saying, hey, folks, this is imperative for us. So that does happen, but I'm not going to say it's a committee, of just what do they call us? Rochester, St. Cloud regional centers. Thank you.
Did AMSD ever get the stuff figured out? And or am I thinking of the wrong organization?
Is that the one where they were selling in the building and that? I don't think that was, I think that's a different one. Okay. I think.
Monica?
So with this conversation, I'm realizing that I don't understand exactly how both associations work, really. I mean, I know they're there and know we're part of them, but talking about AMSD and MSBA. But I don't know how do we participate on it, only other than going to meetings and some trainings. And I just wondering where do I get that information? Should I ask? I want to know more about how we participate and we are active within those organizations. Like when I was saying, can we form a committee? Who's the people that will form that committee, or how do they meet? When do they meet? When do they? Yeah. Where can I get more detail about how both of the organizations work and how much is our investment on them? Or who do I ask?
So from the AMSDC, whatever. From that one, we can easily put you in contact with Scott Kuhnquist. He is the lead person, and he will call you immediately. Anytime we've actually needed or asked or made a request of Scott, we've got a response within 60 minutes. So I can definitely take care of that one for you. You said something about the second organization. I'm not sure exactly who you're talking about with that one. Oh, MSBA, Minnesota School Board Association. That one, hopefully school board members can take care of each other with the response to that one. Al, you were asking the one group, it's TIES. That's it. And the other, St. Paul and Minneapolis are part of, because my phone is zoot, zoot, zoot. And so people hear me ask the question and they have responded instantly to let me know, come on, Will, you should know that answer. And so Minneapolis and St. Paul are part of AMSDC, AMSD, and TIES is what you were looking for.
Scott?
Okay, I understand that a lot of the suburban districts are able to pass operating referendums. And apparently, after 5 years, they no longer have to be operating referendums. They can be board approved. We've never had an operating referendum up here that I know of. Is that toward our interests or not? That's something after 5 years becomes a board-approved increase instead of a voter-approved increase.
Les?
I just want to make sure, just focus of the conversation, I'm not quite understanding. On the table is membership in the Minnesota Okay, that's what's on the table. My question is there, why would we not, or why would we? I understand people, they don't always represent your specific interest all the time, but is there a reason why we should not be a member of that organization? And if there is, we should hear that, because I think that's what we're trying to figure out. It sounds like what's going on. So does anybody have that concern, that we
Yes.
should not?
Yes. I feel that they lobby against our district's best interests.
All right. You have that thought. Strong enough not to belong. You're suggesting we not belong to the organization.
I would prefer to suggest that we strongly send a message to AMSD that they aren't working in all of their members' best interests.
And if I might, so being a member of the organization would help us to move that agenda better or not?
If we are one member that doesn't, I mean, the way that we would move that agenda by being a member is to be very vocal within the organization.
And our representative is Zach Dorold. Are you vocal, Zach?
Literally changed the platform.
Okay. So it was helpful to be a member.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify if we're talking about this. I just wonder, we should either be a member or not a member, but in a member with clout or noise or but the person who's down there saying, we want this, whatever would be you. Okay.
And Bruce Henches before him. So
I kind of thought so. So it's it seems, is everybody agreeing it would be better to be a member than not to be a member? Because this should be simple.
Well, I don't think everybody is. So
Okay.
We do have some differing opinions
Okay.
about that. So
I'm trying to,
I think that's what we're sorting out is.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sold on that, Les.
okay.
I don't know I don't really understand what the benefits that we receive from AMSD are. I understand that there are some benefits in the relationship that we have with other districts and the ability to coordinate and cooperate with other districts on certain things. But when it comes to our legislative platform, I don't feel that AMSD works in a way that, I don't feel that they take it seriously, that some districts have a real problem with special education cost subsidy. And I don't feel that saying that we don't want it to get worse is when it's already really, really, really bad. I don't think that that's a great accomplishment to say that was our platform to go to the legislature and say that. I feel that they should go to the legislature and say, we need to do something to fix the special education cross subsidy so that it isn't harming districts the way that it is. However, 40-some probably, or at least high 30s of the 42 schools or districts that are in AMSD, they aren't harmed by the special education cross subsidy. So they aren't going to lobby for it. So is it to our advantage to join a group that doesn't have the same interests that we have? I don't know if it is or not. That's what I'm trying to hash out.
Is there a better
thank you.
organization that would advocate for us and that has a voice that advocates?
No, but if we join AMSD, then that kind of takes us out of the ring for going down there and advocating for ourselves. How can you be a part of an organization that's advocating one thing, and then how do you go to the legislature and advocate against the organization that you're a part of? It seems to me like we'd be better off going directly to the legislature and lobbying.
Okay. Natalie?
Maybe we don't have the voice.
Zach, could you read read what you wrote what you read before about the language? Because in my understanding, the end said, and in 5 years, eliminate the cross subsidy. Did I not hear that correctly?
Yeah, the last was to develop and implement a plan to close the cross subsidy in 5 years. So they're only asking the legislature to get this done in 5 years, recognizing there's $2.x billion lift as it sits now.
Monica, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. So I want to say that I will not recommend that we go into the legislation and try to lobby for ourselves. I don't think that we have the mechanisms to do that. I don't think that we are strategic enough to do that. And I think that that will be at the service of ourselves. I don't think that there is another organization that we can do that. I think that AMSD has the know-how and the possibilities to do it, and I will think that is a better strategy for ourselves to try to advocate within inside the organization to get a room or a committee, as Al was suggesting earlier, that we could have other districts which belong to MSD that will advocate in that. So I do think that in the process of going to the legislation, it's better to do it with a strategy in hand and some knowledge previous about it. So because of that, I do recommend, and my vote for it will be to be part of AMSD, and I would recommend that we all do so.
Is that a motion?
Well, if we're ready for a motion, I will move that we are part of MSD.
Well, it doesn't stop our conversation, just wondering if it was.
I mean, I'm ready to make a motion. It just I can make a motion. We can continue discussion. I don't know if there is a second. So I move that we become part of AMSD.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Monica and a second by Les. Any further discussion?
Yes. How do we communicate our wishes to AMSD?
I think through the legislative committee.
Have we
And
had
what
a
wishes are
legislative
the,
committee meeting to discuss it? I don't think we've had a legislative committee meeting in 2 years, and I don't think we have a platform for AMSD.
The platform we stayed with was what we had put together. That was from Bruce Hench's, other than adding the dollars. So we don't have a new one. We can easily do that. I believe AMSD sends out surveys to district members. I don't know who in administration would get that. They also have, I just sent an email to everyone. I was under the assumption everybody got their emails and their forms and everything. Maybe don't, so.
Les?
Well, it might be, I'd recommend that Zach put together a group of 2, I think, well, they can put together 3 board members to formulate what would be a solid recommendation to.
Yeah.
I know that, but let's back away from that and just, not back away from the committee. What I meant was to back away from that concept and have a group of people sit down and say, this is what we would like to recommend, that AMSD, whatever it is, to recommend to the legislature that fits our needs, and we may be able to contact Rochester or the other ones who have that same cross subsidy problem and say, we'd like you to sign on to this with us, and then present that to AMS, whatever, the Association of Metropolitan School Boards, which is easier to say than the acronym. Does that make sense?
It is on number 5, and it is addressing the issues. on number 5 that Zach was talking about, is it that you wanted a higher priority from AMSD, or that you want the AMSD to have a stronger arm with the legislation to make it happen?
Can I just, I see that, and I'm not faulting Zach, I kind of see that as a throwaway. I mean, it's like, they don't necessarily mean it. I mean, if I have no skin in that game whatsoever, and I need, of the 5 things, and I really do need 3 of them, which ones would I be willing to give up if I could get my 3? Well, so, and I don't mean in a negative sense about throwaway, but the point is, if we want a stronger position, a stronger statement, then end it in 5 years, because it's been going, I mean, we've had this cross-subsidy thing for a long time. So a stronger statement that ended in 5 years. What are we going to do this year, next year, the year after to push the issue? And I think that would be something a group of people could put together, and we could contact the other districts that have the same issue and see if we could get them to join with us in that thing. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think that somehow we have to have an annualized platform. We can't, I mean, I'm sorry, Zach, but we can't go back to one that was created 3 or 4, a board before this one. Most of the people who are on that board don't exist on this board, and I don't know if that platform is what the wishes of this board are. And so I think we need to annually have the legislative committee draft and have us approve a platform to present to AMSD as our platform, and this is what we need from this organization and what we need you to lobby for, and then get their response.
That seems reasonable.
Because, yeah, I mean, that's just, I think that something like that has to happen. And in that case, if we can do that, then I would be in favor of approving this year and then reviewing it, as we have to every year anyway when we join, and seeing if AMSD is being responsive at all to what we're asking for.
Natalie, did you have your hand up, or we?
I did, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we also have to be realistic about how the legislature works. Like, the fact is that not many districts suffer like we do. And what do the legislatures folks want? They want to be reelected again, so they're not going to advocate for something that isn't in their district. And so that's the problem overall, 50,000-foot view, that, maybe Eric and our folks will say, yeah, we need that, but there's just a handful of folks, and then look at the rest of the room who they don't care about it because they don't deal with it. So, it's a bigger issue than does AMSD have it as a big issue or not. I mean, the first year on the board, I was on the legislative committee, and we basically said, that's all we want, is just special education cross-subsidy eliminated. That's it. That's all we need, then we can be a totally different district as far as our income. But even saying that just as us, still number 5. So yes, we need it. And I think we need to be realistic about how we go about it, because it's not an all Minnesota issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so did I have a motion and a second?
Yes.
All right, so then Monica, you motioned, and who second?
Les.
Les? Okay, and it's for the approval of the 2021-2022 membership renewal for AMSD. So Les, will you call roll, please?
Scott Andresen?
Yeah.
Al Dahlgren?
Yes.
Zach Dorhold?
Yes.
Les Green is yes. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my little lines and Things they're confusing me. I think I'm on track now. Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
and Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up is strategic plan update. It's a discussion item presented tonight by Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education.
Good evening. Our public input said he didn't get paid by the word, but after tonight, I think I might ask Superintendent Jett if I can get paid by the word. It's a good. Oh, dang it. All right.
That's what I tried to do.
All right. Thank you. Well, good evening again, Chair Hawes, members of the board, Superintendent Jett, and community members who are watching from afar. This evening, I am excited to share with you the Strategic Plan 2019-23 update. And that's an update on the outputs and the outcomes, and we'll review all of that language. We're going to be recommending a strategic plan for 2021-24. As I go through, there is going to be a lot of information presented, and so I would invite you to ask questions at the conclusion of each strategic focus area. Though certainly you are, of course, welcome to ask or comment at any time that you feel the need. And though, again, I am the one speaking, this work has been done in partnership with the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary, our Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, and of course, our entire cabinet team. I would like to begin just by reminding our community about our mission statement and core values. I will not read those out loud to you, though they are here on the screen and are available on our district website. And these do drive the work of our strategic plan and the work of everything that we do. For the 2021-24 strategic plan, administration recommends maintaining the same objectives and initiatives for each focus area. But before I begin, I want to provide you with an overview of what you can expect to hear tonight. First, I'll review each area of the plan. So I'll go through each focus area, as well as the objectives and the strategic initiatives, the outcomes, the outputs, those are the strategies we were using, and then the outcomes, the data that resulted from the actions that we took. I think it's just important to note, because of the unusual and unexpected nature of the past 15 months, some of our plan outputs and outcomes have changed, and I will be clear about those, what changed and why as we proceed through. Last year, as you are very well aware, required us to focus on what was in front of us, to educate and support our students and care for those in our community with full commitment and passion. Because of this, we had little opportunity to focus on our strategic planning work. That is not to say we didn't work hard and diligently at meeting the strategic plan objectives. We did, and our data will attest to that. However, the students, staff, and families we serve now are not the same as those in 2019. Even if they're the same people, we've all changed in who we are after living through this last 15 months or so. And not only have our humans in our schools changed, our system has changed as well, and that is, I think, for the better in many, many ways. Tonight, we're going to ask you for time to focus on these goals and objectives rather than anything new, to focus on what we do and do it well rather than add any new goals or strategies to our plate. By asking for the same strategic plan, please know that we are not resting on our laurels. Instead, you can expect increases in our outcome data. We always want to grow and improve, and you and the public should expect that of us. Additionally, for some of our outcomes, you'll hear me provide 2019 baseline data, but for a few of the others, you won't. And why is that? It's because though we have the data from 2019, some of the comparative data either won't make sense because we had to change our metrics. We changed the strategies that we used and from 2019 to now, and that means that our data may not quite correlate or there might not be a fair connection to be drawing between the data from 2019 and now, or because our outputs had to be modified based on the challenges of COVID. And so we want to make sure that we are doing any of the comparisons that we're doing are fair and accurate, and so we'll discuss those as we go. As a reminder to our public, and our strategic plan is founded on the world's best workforce legislation. The legislation has 5 pillars, and it's that all students are ready for kindergarten, all achievement gaps are closed, all students read on level by grade 3, all students attain career and college readiness, and all students graduate from high school. Our focus areas, objectives, and initiatives are aligned to meet these goals. So as we proceed through the plan, we will start with the 1923 strategic focus area. Just as the reminder, I'm sure you are all aware of it, but sometimes a reminder never hurts. When you're looking at it in the circle, that's the focus area, and it will show you, we have 5 of those, and it will show you the title of it. So this focus area 1 is positive climate and culture. And the next column, you'll see our objectives under this focus area. And then on the final column on my right is the strategic initiatives. The ones that are highlighted or shaded in gray, I should say more accurately, shaded in gray are the ones that we have focused on for the upcoming, for the past years, and again are recommending that we continue to focus on. Okay, here we go. On this slide and the slides that follow, we'll provide a summary of the strategic plan in one condensed graphic. It shows the strategic initiative, of course the focus area is in the corner. It shows the strategic initiatives, the proposed outputs from the 1923 strategic plan, the actual outputs used, the 1923 proposed outcomes, and then the actual outcomes. So there's going to be a lot of data. And some of the outcomes I will say out loud. There is a summary, but then I will also break it down by elementary and secondary as was requested by our Achievement Integration Board members. And so I will say that. You won't see those broken down on the screen. For Objective 1.1, Strategic Initiative 1.1A, which is to integrate social emotional learning and supports, our proposed outcomes are the safe and supportive school plans and advisory lessons delivered district-wide K-12. For this initiative, our outputs matched because COVID did not disrupt those advisory activities or the safe and supportive school plans. Every school did complete those plans, as is required to be a PBIS school, and they are posted on our website. Additionally, the majority of our schools delivered advisory lessons that integrated social and emotional learning supports based on those the CASEL competencies, which are self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, self-regulation, and problem solving. Throughout the evening, you'll see that many of our proposed outcomes in the strategic plan are measured by the climate survey, including for this strategic initiative. And I will be giving you the numbers of the data set for the climate survey results, so you know how many took the survey for students, families, and staff. So our proposed outcomes were that by May of 2022, 85% of students taking the climate survey would indicate they feel safe at school, that students talk about the importance of understanding their own feelings and those of others, and that they listen for understanding. So this year, of the students eligible to take the climate survey, that's grades 3 through 12, a bit under half, so 48% took the survey. This percentage is about 5% lower than usual. We believe that slight decline is based on the numbers of students enrolled in DLA, because it's much easier to have the students take the climate survey when they're sitting in front of you and not across a screen. And the turbulence of the school year. There's a lot of demands on our students, our families, and our staff, and so you will see slight declines in all of those populations taking the climate survey. For your awareness, since many of our outcomes are based on the survey, about a third of the respondents were grades 3 through 5, a third were middle schoolers, and a third were high schoolers. So a nice distribution across the grades 3-12. So for our 2021 outcomes for 1.1A, we think they are extremely promising. Overall, 86.5% of students indicate that they feel safe at school. Our goal was 85% by 2022. That's 91% of elementary students, 87% of middle level, and 83% of high schoolers. Overall, an average of 58.9% indicated that students talk about the importance of understanding their own and others' feelings. 67% of elementary students, 56% of middle, and 54% of high schoolers. Finally, an average of 67.9% of students indicate working on listening to others, understanding what others are trying to say. I think that's a pretty decent outcome given our current state of affairs right now, that our kids are working on listening to what others have to say and understanding that. And that's 77% of elementary students, 66% of middle, and 60% of high school students.
Now, these would be percent of those who took the survey.
That is correct.
And we only had about 48% take the survey.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. So this is one of those instances where we just want to point out that while we are really excited about that increase, especially in the students who are feeling safe at school, we just want to be cautious about drawing comparisons between the data sets. Because the circumstances in 2019 and 2021 were profoundly different, and it doesn't, that caution doesn't in any way indicate that we aren't feeling really positive about that outcome. We really are. We want all of our students to feel safe at school, but some of our students may have been at home when they took the survey. So just wanting to be sure that we are clear and transparent about what that what this data could or could not mean. Regardless, 86% of our students felt safe, and that's really exciting. In terms of strategies moving forward, we will continue to emphasize health and safety in our school environments and teach and practice identifying feelings and listening to others for understanding. For Strategic Initiative 1.1b, we are focusing on ensuring every school and district facility is safe and welcoming. Of the proposed outputs, this is the first time you'll see a mismatch between proposed and actual outputs. Our initial, in 2019, we said welcome audits would be our outputs. Well, as you can imagine, that is a very people-intensive strategy that required guests to come from the outside into our buildings, which is, of course, not safe during the COVID year. So we adjusted those outputs to be our COVID protocols and the system-wide communication. I believe all of you are aware, but in case anybody listening is not aware, our superintendent communicated weekly with families and staff beginning March of 2019 and continuing through May of 2021. Additionally, Executive Director Bo provided weekly HR updates to staff. Our building administrators also sent weekly family and staff communications. We did host start of the year and mid-year town halls, including town halls that were specific to our families who with students receiving special education services for all of our elementary and secondary families and staff. So we were very deliberate about our communications, and we believe that is tied to ensuring every school and district facility is safe and welcoming. So our proposed outcomes were that by May of 2022, 85% of the 742 parents taking the climate survey, so again, to Scott's point, of those people taking the climate survey, 85% would indicate their child is safe, and 90% of parents would indicate that their child feels welcome. So the percentage of parents or guardians who took the climate survey was roughly equivalent to 2019. About 8% fewer families took the survey. So our actual outcomes for 1.1b are that in May of 2021, so a year ahead, 90% of parents taking the climate survey indicated their child is safe at school. That was 93% of elementary and 86% of secondary families. And that was a substantial increase over 2019. It's a 7.7% increase for elementary and a 17% increase at secondary. Furthermore, in May of 2021, 92.9% of parents taking the survey indicated they feel welcome at their child's school. I think a pretty stellar data for the middle of a COVID year. That was 94% of elementary parents and 91% of secondary parents. The elementary percentage remained stable between 2019 and 21 at around 94%. We saw an increase of 5.1% of secondary families saying they feel welcome. So our final strategic initiative in this focus area is to improve culture by using input from staff. Our proposed and actual inputs for this initiative did match, and those were our happiness advantage strategies. Those include, there are 4 of them. They include positive mantras, reminders, and restructuring. Those are things like daily gratitude, exercise, conscious acts of kindness. Converting stress to learning experiences, which is consciously adjusting our mindset to be more positive and identifying coping strategies. Problem solving, and seeking information and support, which is finding and having a network of support to actively seek out, especially during times of challenge and setback. Useful, again, during the last 15 months. Our proposed outcomes were that staff will report more frequent uses of mindfulness practices and lower levels of work-related stress, as assessed by the district pre- and post surveys on mindfulness, satisfaction, stress, and resiliency. The actual outcomes of 1.2a were measured by the climate survey rather than the pre and post test. We wanted to ensure consistency of ongoing assessment of this area, so we embedded them into the climate survey. And would like to note that about 50% fewer staff took the climate survey this year than in 2019. However, more licensed staff took the survey than in past years. Regarding the overall decrease, we attribute this fact to the fact that our staff were focused on their essential tasks at hand, which were educating, preparing, inspiring, engaging, and empowering our students and families during a life-altering pandemic. So we do not believe that the decline is because our staff aren't engaged in the process or engaged in continuous improvement. We think that they had a lot on their plates. And sometimes when you're focusing that hard on taking care of kids, it's hard to add one more thing. So of the 7-4 staff who completed the annual climate survey and reported using the following mindfulness practices more than 3 times a week, 40% used positive mantras, reminders and restructuring, 27% reported converting stress to learning experiences, 41% reported using problem-solving strategies, and 36% reported seeking information and support. Of all of those, there was a decline between 5 and 10% from the 2019. And although they have declined slightly, we do believe that the results are positive given the challenges of that COVID year, that people are even still engaging in those strategies. Additionally, 76.9% of the staff who took the survey reported feeling supported and respected at work, which is up from 70.6%. And this one I think is quite spectacular, if I get to insert my own opinion into it. 71.4% of staff who completed the annual climate survey reported that when things go badly, employees bounce back quickly and do not give up, which is a 20% increase from 52% in 2019. So here is our recommendation for 21-24 strategic plan, which you will see is that we get to continue to focus on the initiatives that we're doing. We made clear and deliberate shifts in the past year to paying careful attention to people's well-being. We attended closely to staff and providing them with the support they needed. They in turn were able to provide even more exceptional services to our students and families. Our staff chose this profession because they want to be in service to students and families. When they are afforded a healthy space and provided with a safe, supportive climate and culture that allows our community to thrive, we see these kinds of increases in feelings of safety, belonging, and resilience. We anticipate continuation and improvement on the strategies we've identified for the coming year, which will allow us to sustain or increase our outcome data. And so for that reason, you can see that this focus area is identical to the one that you formally approved. So that's my pause at the end of focus area 1 to see if there are any questions.
Yes, you had mentioned town hall meetings. I remember getting stuff from the superintendent. I remember getting stuff from Tracy Bowes, but town hall meetings I don't remember being notified of. And we're each assigned a school that we could have a special relationship with. And it would have been nice to at least get notice from those schools of the town hall meetings so that we could participate if we could find the time and energy.
Absolutely, thank you. I think it's possible it could have been before you were elected because I know Jeff Polreese attended. So I think that might have been it. And then the ones that we did for staff were mid-year, just trying to check in. So we do have one coming up in August, and I will make sure that we get that invitation out to our board. It will be held to make open for all families, just to help go through how to navigate a school system and then navigate our school system in particular. So we'll make sure that that is available. I appreciate that feedback, Scott. Thank you.
I kind of have a question. I don't know if I kind of have a question. I do have a question, but it's kind of a question and kind of a, well, let me just tell you what I'm asking you. I noticed that you use the term all for educational improvement. And I want to ask, it is not possible for us to say as a school district that 85% of the students will be able to read at grade level. That's not something we can say. It wouldn't make, that's why we use all. And the possibility always exists that we could do that. I'm trying to clear my mind with it because we back in 2014 it was all and the reality was it wasn't going to happen. But I'm not sure that that's the reality anymore. As I look at what you've done, it looks like you might pull it off. So I understand strategically, and I'll use this term politically, but I don't mean it in a negative sense. We cannot, as a district, say that we would only cause 85 or 95% of the students to be able to read at grade level. That would not be fair for us to do that. I wouldn't go to a district. I wouldn't have my kids go to a school district that says that. So I understand all a lot better now. That's why I want to put that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
I love being able to hear this 2 days in a row because I'm like, ooh, I didn't catch that the first time. I just want to point out that when I first got on the board, we were talking all the time about safety. We always are, but especially because of some instances that we had. And so for parents and students to say that they're feeling safe, that's big ups to the things that we've done. I was telling the committee that I was reading some of the percentages about identifying feelings and listening for understanding to my 2 high school boys. And they're like, nobody does that, Mom. Like 60%, no way. So it's interesting because in my community work, it's also hard for adults to identify feelings. So they may tell me a story of cultural, tension, but then I say, well, how did you feel? And nothing. So it's very German folks and Lutheran and Catholic, for that to happen. But yeah. The last thing is the 10% jump in staff feeling supported and respected at work, even with their increased workload, is really impressive. So I just wanted to point those wonderful things out.
Thank you.
They're talking about safety and security. Is that involved with the secured entrances to the buildings that we've been spending lots of money on?
I think a variety of factors contribute, and while that wasn't our specific output as our action, I think that absolutely contributes to people's feelings of safety and security. Okay, thank you. We will move on to strategic focus area 2, which focuses on instruction that produces positive outcome. Before we get started on this one, sometimes I think in education we can get tripped up by using jargon and not explaining what we mean by specific words. So I'd like to take a minute to articulate some of the language that we're using. As you'll note in Strategic Initiative 2.1a, It's to ensure all learning, all instruction and programming is culturally relevant and engaging. So just to take a moment to define what culturally relevant means before diving into this focus area. In our district, culturally relevant means that we approach learning by providing curriculum, lessons, and examples that come from a variety of cultures. For example, an elementary picture book may include illustrations or photos of children from different races, ethnicities, religions, and abilities. Our goal in being culturally relevant is to ensure all of our students see themselves in their classrooms, hallways, and their learning, and that's to increase achievement by bringing relevance to our teaching. So if we take a closer look at Strategic Initiative 2.1a, you can see our proposed outputs, which are classroom walkthroughs and observations and walkthroughs. And the observations are the formal evaluations, and the walkthroughs are when administrators just drop in for 15 or 20 minutes. And these match our actual outputs because despite the multiple forms of instruction, hybrid, in-person, distance learning, our teachers and administrators successfully transferred and transitioned that work throughout the models. Our teams were able to conduct observations and walkthroughs during the course of the year, and that's a big shout out to our teachers because that's some real vulnerability and trust between our teachers and our administrators to be doing a whole new kind of learning and teaching and still be willing and engaged in that process. So our proposed outcomes were that by May of 2022, 85% of students and instructional staff taking the climate survey will indicate that instructional materials reflect students' backgrounds, ethnicity, and identity, and earn a score of 3 or higher on the engagement and enjoyment domain. And Standards for Success is the software that we house our observation data in. And the max is 4, so it's a 1 to a 4, where 1 means unacceptable, a 4 means utterly outstanding. So our actual outcomes are that of May of 2021, 77.4% of students who completed the survey indicated that instructional materials reflect their background, ethnicity, and identity. These included 63% of elementary, 84% of middle, and 82% of high school students. We don't believe these data were significantly influenced by the changing variables presented by the pandemic, so we believe a comparison to the 2019 data is reasonable and appropriate. So in 2019, 82% of elementary, 79% of middle, and 73% of high school students responded in the affirmative. So while the average percentage of students remained about the same overall, we did note a decrease at the elementary and an increase in the middle and high schools of students noting the materials reflect their backgrounds. So our learning and teaching and elementary ASUP folks are partnering to better understand that data. In regard to the instructional staff, 76% who completed the survey indicated the instructional materials reflect students' backgrounds. That was an increase of 5.5% from 2019 when 71.5% of staff indicated the same. For the final outcome of May of 2021, 89.5% of licensed staff earned at least a 3 on the engagement and enjoyment domain, and we are excited that in a year when engagement mattered perhaps more than ever, that data, we saw that increase in our outcome data. So for objective 2.1, Strategic Initiative 2.2b, that is to maintain a systematic process to analyze all student needs based on data. Our proposed and actual outputs matched, and that was data retreats and our school improvement plans. We did conduct virtual data retreats in August and March, which of course inform our school improvement plans and continuous improvement process. And we've been sure to incorporate those into our school presentation so that you and our public would be aware about what those strategies were. Our proposed outcome was that by the end of 2022 school year, district-wide performance in math and reading will increase as compared to 2018-19 district benchmark and state assessment results, with at least 60% of students improving or maintaining their achievement level. So for 21-22 outcomes, we do not have the final MCA data yet. It will be embargoed until late August. Progress and achievement is important to us and to our community, so we want to provide you with an update using the data we do have. We used local measures to determine our progress made, which for us, STAR, that's the STAR data. And while it's not directly correlated to MCA proficiency, And of course, we know MCA proficiency data will be challenging to use with integrity given the complexities over the past 15 months. We do want to provide this measure of academic growth. So overall, using the STAR, 55.2% of students made average growth in math from fall to spring. That's compared with 56% in 18-19. So 55% this year, 56% in 18-19. So really very stable percentages of students keeping the average growth in math. 54.5% of students made average growth in reading, and that's compared with 57.7% in 18-19. So about a 3% decline for reading. So like Focus Area 1, we are asking to continue working on both of these strategic initiatives, especially given that our data, our outcome data we were missing an entire year there, and so would like to have a chance to continue working here and are recommending no changes. Any questions before I jump into Strategic Focus Area 3?
Can you go back one slide for a minute? I just want to understand that STAR data. Because the proposed outcome is improving or maintaining their achievement level, and then it says made an average growth. But does that also include like crazy good growth as well? You know what I mean? Like it's average or better, basically growth, not just average growth.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And to your point, it is an aggregate of students and of the scores. So
yeah, okay, thank you.
Absolutely, good question. All right, as I joked with the Achievement Integration team, it is downhill from here, I promise. This is Strategic Area, Focus Area 3. It focuses on evaluation and resource allocation. And the initiative was to implement a system for assessing the effectiveness of district programs and initiatives. Our proposed outputs were to prioritize the program evaluation list and program evaluation schedule. We said by May of 2022, 100% of district programs and initiatives will have an individualized evaluation plan in place and will have been evaluated for program effectiveness. I am really excited. Do you want to click on that hyperlink in my notes? You scroll down over here in my notes, you can see the hyperlink. We will show you briefly one of our initiatives that has its own measurement plan. So we spent a very intensive spring as an administrative team, both building and district level, and school leadership teams, going through all of the initiatives that we have. We had them on posters, and it was spread all across the room. And the one thing that we learned over this past year is that we need to do fewer things and do them better. And so we prioritized all of our initiatives. We came up with 16. Okay. We came up with 16 of them that we are going to focus on for the coming year. And each of them has its own measurement plan. And so do you want to give me the TV for a sec? What are we on? Are we on Apple TV? 3? Okay. So this work was done in collaboration with all of our directors. And it's oh my goodness, what is happening with Google? Google isn't working.
Oh, okay.
It's not the TV, it's Google. So sorry, I will email that out to you so you can see what the evaluation plan looks like. We have it for all 16 of our. I'm very excited about it. It's actually beautiful work. So I'll send that out to you. So, okay, thank you. So we do want to continue to focus on this strategic initiative because we're just at the beginning of the work. We've got the strategies identified, we've got them prioritized, we've got our evaluation plan, and now we just need a year to implement and measure. So we're asking for you guys to approve that one. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, so if I'm remembering this, okay, we were in alignment at first, and then after alignment, now we're looking at programs and resources and which ones we keep and which ones we don't keep, and
Correct.
we did that part already.
Yes.
And then what we're looking for next year, Yeah. What are the outputs?
We said that by 2022, we would have this done. So now we're a year away from meeting that goal because we will have had the full year to actually complete that measurement plan for each of those 16 initiatives.
Okay, so what does it mean for a new program or something that is not there? So something that is not currently here. What does it mean if there is an organization that wants to propose something, a parent or even a person internally that wants to propose something? What does that mean?
We are always open to hearing ideas. What we are asking from our administrators, our community, our team is nothing new. And that doesn't mean we don't want to listen, we don't want to hear, but we know that our year coming up, just like this past year, we need to focus on what's in front of us. We need to focus on what we're doing and make sure that we are doing it efficiently and effectively and really just take care of our kids and our families.
Yeah, but okay, I understand the philosophy of it. What's the sense of listening if you're going to say no? I mean, if you already know that you're going to say no.
Go ahead.
Didn't say that we were going to say no. Okay, that's not what she said, and that's not what we've tried to communicate. Her first sentence was, we are more than willing to listen. We want people to give us ideas and thoughts and be creative, because that's what we kind of pride ourselves on, is people coming to us with new ideas and new ways to be able to help our students and to be able to help us with our craft. We are saying out loud that we think this year has the potential to be unique. And so we're expressing internally that we're trying to keep, I'm going to use the word, keep it simple. I've been told to use that differently in a different way, but trying to just keep it simple. But at the same token, are we open and are we listening? Yes, because we know there's always, just like in this past year, and some of the things that we had to do in the last 18 months, there's best practices that come from that. And so we're going to be able to use some of that as we're moving forward. So I'm just trying to make sure that we don't, you heard her say in the very beginning, we're open, we're listening. But then the way she phrased it was, we're telling people that, okay, please, we're what I think you interpreted as closed-minded or that we're not, it doesn't matter, that we're not going to do anything anyways. And that's not the case.
I think one example I might be able to offer would be that we very clearly saw the benefit and necessity of partnership with families, with community. So over the coming partnering with new organizations for after-school supports, for evening supports, for family supports, and we are actively engaged in that dialogue with community members. So is that something new? Yes, we've always had partnerships, but we're looking to do it differently. I think. But what we aren't doing is giving a principal or a teacher something new to add onto their plate. So we're not saying, okay, now help all of these students recover from the emotional toll, help them catch up on X, Y, and Z standards, and then do this new curriculum, right? Implement this new initiative. So we're trying to maybe shelter, if might be the right word, our frontline classroom teachers, our administrators, but not lose sight of any of those great things that we've learned or that people might bring to us. Does that help? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Strategic focus area 4 focuses on career and post-secondary education enrollment education options. So for 4.1A, it's to provide career and work skills related curriculum instruction to all PK-12 students. You'll see a difference between our proposed and actual outcomes. Our proposed outcomes are to focus on EPIC. That's that high school course, career course. Get Ready, Gear Up, that's at the middle school, and the pre-K-5 plan. And this year, over the past year or so, since we began the strategic plan, we focused on EPIC and Get Ready, Gear Up. Our outcomes were that by May of 2022, 100% of District 742 pre-K and 12th grade students will participate in career and work skills related curriculum. This year, our focus was on aligning secondary curriculum and opportunities so that our 612 students receive that programming. So we are going to be focusing on the coming year. I know Mike is already partnering with Leah and Laura and Laurie to work on that PK5 career readiness curriculum. But for this year, 95.5% of students in grades 6 through 12 did participate in that curriculum. The few who didn't either weren't enrolled in the programs that provided the common advisory curriculum, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And that's due to sometimes our students' other health or educational needs if they're in hospital programming, and then we'll talk about McKinley in just a minute. So for 4.2A, it was our strategic initiative is to engage higher education, business, and community partners to create increased career and college learning opportunities for 6th to 12th grade students. Our proposed outputs were to our career and college advisory, and you've heard about that throughout the year, in alignment between Career Start, Career Launch with our great friends, the Boys and Girls Club of Central Minnesota. And we did continue the career and college advisory, but much like us, our Boys and Girls Club partners were focused on taking care of the kids in front of them. And while we continue to be partners on that career advisory, the intricacies of merging two institutions, curricula, the software, those were just steps that we were not able to take this year, but we talked about it last week, and we're excited to continue on in that the goal towards meeting that output. So the proposed outcomes were that by May of 2022, 100% of 6th to 12th grade students will participate in career exploration and preparation courses. The actual outcomes, when you combine participation in enrollment in EPIC, the 6-12 advisory and Gear Up courses, most of our students were covered. You'll see that for the majority of our secondaries, that is the case. At McKinley, we did not offer consistent advisory curriculum related to career exploration and preparation courses. So only the students participating in work-based learning were included. That's going to change this year. We've already connected our McKinley staff with our high school staff and learning and teaching to make sure that they are offering advisory in the same manner as our other high schools, and that their curriculum is aligned to the other high schools. And additionally, we are excited to say that McKinley will be offering health career courses, which is a new thing for that school community. And then our 742 Career and College Advisory met 4 times during the year. We did meet virtually, and it included over 30 business and community partners. Those folks remain engaged in this work, and their partnership has been instrumental in the progress made on this objective, and we remain exceedingly grateful for their volunteer time. So as you've heard, we've made substantial strides in some of these areas, and we have work yet to do, and we've identified that work tonight. So we are asking that this, for continuation for the strategic focus area and initiatives, that they be consistent so we have time to complete the work that we set out to do. Any questions on this focus area?
I noticed McKinley. It's a low number compared to the others, and it would almost be the group that needs it most.
You got that right.
So is there a reason that we could?
Advisory, yeah, thank you, Dr. Green. Advisory was not being implemented consistently, and we have corrected that for the coming year. Absolutely.
I seem to remember at Tech, by the main entrances, there was tables set up for career and college. You couldn't get in and out of the school without going by one of those tables. And I think that might be why you have such a high percentage. I mean, you did something right.
Thank you. We are very excited about our career and college centers, and we are actually expanding that to McKinley in this coming year because, to your and Dr. Green's point, that is a very engaging thing for our students, is to see that right there and to be able to see it, touch it, taste it, feel it. And all of our students need it. Our McKinley students absolutely deserve and need the same opportunity, if not more. So thank you.
Les?
Just to comment, one of the students I talked to at graduation, I asked them, what are you going to do? And all of them knew what they were going to do. It might be something as school board members when we're at the graduation, as we talk to students, to make it a point to ask them, what are your plans for? And maybe you do already, but what are you going to do? Because I think it's another place to focus some intention on their future. And I did notice that, I mean, there was a lot of them. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not talking in the microphone. All right, I'm getting Gordy signals back there. But that's the point. I mean, it felt good to ask and have all of them say, one was my granddaughter was a sonographer, and I said, wow, okay, great. And so others that I asked, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And so they had an idea, a very specific idea of what they were going to do, which is good, I think.
It's amazing, and we're grateful to hear that, and we're excited that we'll be launching our career and college path high schools this year, and you'll be hearing more about that in the coming months. And I think that will only help change students' experience in the classroom, right? Thinking about that relevancy and engagement, we're really excited to continue deepening students' experiences with career and college pathways.
Anyone else? Natalie?
I think the other thing that's been really neat is to see the pathways for my boys who are in 10th and 9th grade or going into 11th and 10th. They're so different. Quinn wants to go to college forever, apparently, to be a psychiatrist, and Aaron wants to go to be ER doctor, also forever. But it's like, should I take AP classes or should I do PSEO? And then Aaron was thinking PSEO, but then, oh no, actually you can take this health careers class at Apollo and it transfers. So, the navigation that they're providing the students, first of all, knowing what he wants to do, but then saying, don't just follow your brother's path because that's actually not going to work out for what you want to do. So it's been very individualized, which we've loved.
Thank you for that feedback. It's great to hear.
All right. Anything else?
Okay, we're on number 5. So our final strategic focus area is family and community engagement. You'll see that this has 3 objectives and 3 initiatives that we're focusing on. So for strategic initiative 5.1A, it is to create school-based together families, educators, and community. Our proposed outputs are slightly different from our actual outputs. Our proposed outputs were the Parents in Action class, Empower Learning, Title Compacts, Family Listening, Welcome Conferences. Those are the ones we do at the start of the year. Site councils and parent advisories. Our actual outputs were that we did not offer ongoing curriculum-based parent classes, Parents in Actions this year during the pandemic year. Partly that was because our families had a lot going on, just partnering with us and educating their children at home. And then we had a lot going on. And it was also challenging to do virtually. We did hold the virtual welcome conference, and those were highly successful in terms of attendance, even virtually. We are holding site councils and parent advisories. Those were virtually, and we did some of the town halls. And of course, we provided the weekly communications that I referenced earlier. The proposed outcomes for 5.1A were that by May of 2022, 90% of 742 parents taking the climate survey will indicate that their child's school encourages them to be active partners in educating their child, and that the school sees them as a partner in their child's education. And I think maybe after all that virtual learning, maybe they don't want to be quite as active partners now. I'm just joking. It's a lot, especially elementary parents. My goodness, they had a handful. Absolutely, that's a lot to do. Or I suppose trying to teach your kid math. I couldn't do that after 5th grade. But so May of 2021, our actual outcomes were that 89.8% of our families who completed the survey indicated, so we could round that up to 90, indicated their child's school encourages them to be active partners in educating their child. Of these, 93.8% were elementary parents, 83.3% were secondary. Compared to 2019, it's a 4.6% decrease in elementary and a 4.2% increase at secondary. In May of 2021, 86.9% indicated that the school sees them as a partner in their child's education. That was 91.7% of elementary parents, 78% of secondary parents. Compared to 2019, that's a 1.6 decrease in elementary and a 3.4 decrease in secondary. For Strategic Initiative 5.2A, you'll notice the outputs and outcomes are very similar to 5.1A. However, the outputs are tied to creating systems and procedures. So looking at Welcome Center procedures, procedures at significant entry points or points in students' lives, and then navigation-focused programs like how do you get and successfully manage our school system as a family. So this year we are excited. You've heard this before from Lacey Locken and our equity team, but we began implementing American Indian individual learning plans at grades K, 2, 5, and 8. We did the town halls, and as you heard me tell Scott earlier, and I'll get you the invitation, we do have a navigation type orientation or town hall plan for August, and that will be interactive and offered in English, Somali, and Spanish. The outcomes, I'm not going to go through the data again because they are the same outcomes and the same data that you heard in 5.1A. So for Strategic Initiative 5.3A, that was to create a district advisory committee. That committee was actually our learning and teaching / world's best workforce committee. And that did meet. They met 4 times over the year. We said that we would develop a survey to evaluate stakeholder engagement, and that is something that we need to develop that's separate from our climate survey, so we have not done that yet. When we did meet as an advisory committee, we focused on reviewing the world's best workforce, our strategic plan with that committee. We reviewed literacy curricula and discussed dyslexia, and we talked about multilingual education and our career and college pathways. And that is the conclusion of the focus area 5. So what questions may you have?
Scott?
It would seem to me that distance learning forced parents to be more involved in their kids' education, particularly at the elementary level. Is there any evidence of that?
I think these engagement numbers certainly speak to them feeling like an active partner and them feeling like we need them to be an active partner. We had set what we thought was a lofty goal and are close to meeting that. So I think that yes, you are correct. That certainly forced some additional engagement that none of us could have expected in 2019. Though I think we're all glad to go back to hopefully a regular school year and just need to continue to find strategies to keep that engagement because we need our families as vital and active partners.
Lori, you said that the MCAA data is embargoed until the end of August. Is that typical timing?
That is typical timing.
Okay, so it's not later this year than normal.
No.
But we won't really be able to see what level of learning loss may have occurred, or if it was who knows, maybe we had gain. All of the other things looked really good, so maybe that'll look really good. But we won't really be able to see that until late August.
Correct. And we do have that slated on the upcoming agendas for the board. I think we are looking at sometime in October, combining that with the world's best workforce as we report out. But I think that is still under consideration for board development and for cabinet. We do plan to bring that forward.
If I might.
Yes.
Okay. I just have some words, and because they kept coming to mind. The words are clear, comprehensive, focused, inclusive, encouraging, understandable, rational. Great job. Makes sense, and I think we're moving up in front of the rest of the world. This has been involved in our strategic planning for a long time, and it's evolved over the years, and this seems to be the real, what's that French? Creme de la creme? I'm very happy and proud of this. I think this is really good, and that I hope we might share that with some other school districts that might need to.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Our team's worked hard.
Al?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with you, Les. I agree on that 100%. And I know at first, when we implemented a rolling strategic plan, there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions as to how that was going to work. But I think there's so much value in reviewing and reevaluating it every year as we move forward. But great job.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate that feedback.
Monica?
I have to express my happiness, not only for the great job that you're doing, but listening to board members, giving the cheer up to the strategic plan and seeing that this is very well received and not a point of debate. So I just have to say that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that to get to this, we needed the messy stuff that happened at the beginning and all those meetings that happened at the beginning. And we needed the input that we get in the beginning with defining even what the goals were and what we wanted to see as a district. So just that happy that this is the continuation or ending of that process.
Anyone else? Natalie?
After yesterday and hearing about the American Indian individual learning plans, there's some interesting data from Minnesota Compass that is demographic data, and it looks at different ethnicities and races and things like that. And we're one of the bottom states when it comes to graduation rates for American Indian students. So, that's scary. And I know we know that here, but just to know that we're doing specific work for one of the most marginalized populations, I was really glad to hear that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Les?
Do we have data on the graduation rates for American Indian students in reservation schools? I mean, the point that you made is interesting, but I wondered, do reservation schools have this, are they included in the graduation rates for Minnesota? And if not, do they do a better job, or maybe we should?
Would be happy to, I don't know the answer to that, and so would be happy to get back to you and the board on that.
Point, I'd like to propose a.
Does Donna know?
Pardon?
Superintendent Jett was looking towards.
I'm looking at Donna on the screen, and Donna, you are more than willing to join in. Folks, this is Donna Roper, our new Executive Director of Research and Assessment. Cannot hear you.
Turn your mic on. She doesn't have it on.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, she does.
Donna, we can't hear you.
So Donna, we're going to have to get you to.
Great speech.
We're going to need you to go ahead and communicate that to the board and to us, probably in email form.
One other point.
Yep.
When we next have a closed session for anything, I would like to see the American Indian education statistics included in that closed session. I know we can do it in a closed session, but we have to notice it. So I'd like, whenever we next have a closed session, if we can include that. I'd just like to see what they look like. I know the numbers are small, but I'd like to look at them.
I feel like they kind of need to be separated, though, because then how is that? So that's a closed session that's recorded, right? Like this closed session we're going to have tonight is recorded and then is made public after
Right.
negotiation. So we couldn't include that in there. How do we have a closed session that would still, the data would remain private?
Turn off the recorder.
He didn't say that.
I'm sure there's an answer, I just don't know the answer.
But
And so we need
it's
somebody to
somehow-
find that out.
somehow the
How can
board-
we make that happen?
I just think as a board, we should be able to hear
Yeah.
and understand that information so we can at least help figure out what we can do. And so, but I know it has to be in a closed session, so if we can figure out a way to have that closed session without imposing on a great deal of time for board members,
I was just going to say that the Achievement Integration and Equity Committee is doing having an American Indian overview in October, I think it is, or November. So we have that yearly now. So then after that, there could be a presentation, maybe, Lori, by Lacey to the board. And there are some percentages that are large enough to say, but then, like you said, some that aren't. So we could tackle it in conjunction with that if that would be helpful.
So who could find out the answer to how could we?
You'll find somebody.
Okay, all right. Because I think Les wants to go farther than, because some of the data you're saying, yep, you get to see, but there's so much more. Yep. Monica?
I just want to make a point that I do believe that the data should be consistent. So if we don't have data here from the Native American, for the reservations, I will think that the general data does not include them any other place. So that would be my assumption.
Misunderstood what you meant.
So if the Compass data that Natalie is referring to does not include the reservations here, I will also assume that that data, if it's nationwide, does not include the reservations any other place.
I don't think that's a good assumption to make, but you might be right.
Well, that should be
I'd
consistent.
just like
with
it
data.
confirmed. That's all.
Okay. Anything else on the strategic plan? Scott?
I remember many years ago when Willie was first organizing strategic plan committees. I was on the action committee, and we were trying to figure out how are we going to measure all this stuff. And by golly, you found a way. I was quite amazed because it was really a question, how are we going to measure all this stuff? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to give Lori a break for a while. Next up, COVID-19 funding update presented tonight by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Good evening, Chair Hawes, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. If you can just give me a few seconds to get my computer connected and my presentation ready to go.
Are you ready?
Yeah, did we want to wait for Scott or should I go ahead and start?
It's getting late. Let's
I will
roll.
go ahead and start. Oh, true. That's good point. So tonight we're going to do a review of our COVID-19 funding and an update. One thing I do want to just clarify in terms of language is up until this point, a lot of our conversation has circled around the term CARES funding. The CARES funding is really the first wave of funding, and we'll get through that, get to that in more detail in a little bit. But really, there's funding that extends beyond CARES funding. So we're trying to, as a district, shift that terminology from always calling it CARES funding to referring to it as COVID or COVID-19 funding. So there's really actually 3 different funding sources. The first one is the CARES funding, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Those were the funds that were allocated in March of 2020. These are our allocation amounts that we received. I'm not going to go over all of these amounts because this information had come to the board previously in a prior CARES specific funding update. The majority of these funds are spent, and we'll get to that a little bit later. The second wave of funding was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, abbreviated as CRRSA. The majority of that funding comes in what's called ESSER 2 funding, and our allocation for the district is just under $14 million for those funds. These were the funds that were appropriated by the federal government in December of 2020. And then there was also some summer programming specific. Our estimated allocation for that is $424,000. However, that funds a little bit differently than the rest of the COVID funds, where it's actually the final amount is determined based on the membership hours that we report this summer. So that amount can't exceed that. But if we ended up generating less membership hours than we expected, we may receive slightly less. And then the third funding source, which was the final federal stimulus package in March of 2021, was the American Rescue Plan Act. And this is where the largest portion of the district's funding is coming, and really none of this has been spent to date. So there's ESSER 3 funds that fall into two buckets. There's approximately $25 million in ESSER 3 flexible funds, and then there's about $6.2 million in ESSER 3 restricted funds that have to be used specifically geared towards instruction and other related areas to specifically address needs that resulted as a result of lost learning time. So it's just a little bit more focused. In addition to those ESSER funds, there are some formula program-specific funds that we receive. The governor's discretionary ARP funds are specific to summer programming and will be used next summer. There are some ABE funds, some homeless funds, and then we also just learned that there are federal special education funds, but we won't know the allocation amounts for those until the end of August. MDE is just getting the applications out, but we do know there's money coming in that area as well. So this is just really a snapshot of all of the funds we've received, which act they're related to, the total amount, what's actually been spent to date, and what's been obligated to date based on either what was in the approved budget for next year, or some of the funds are being used to offset lost compensatory revenue, and then you can see what's remaining. So all of the CARES funds, with the exception of some things that are just obligated and not actually spent, but all of the CARES funds are spent or obligated really at this point. Where we see our remaining funds are about $6 million in the ESSER 2 funding source, and then the ESSER 3 funds. Almost all of the ESSER 3 funds are unobligated at this point. There is a comprehensive process that has to be done before you submit your budget for ESSER 3 and determine how you're going to spend those funds. That requires a needs assessment, some asset mapping, community input, stakeholder input, staff input, all of that. So we'll be working through that process over the next month to two and getting that application submitted in September based on MDE's deadline to have that in by the end of that month. And then most of the program-specific funds have come out just recently, and so you'll see, with the exception of some of those summer funds, most of that is not spent or obligated yet because we just were made aware of those funds within the last month to 2 months. As far as deadlines for spending, the CRF funds, which were part of the CARES first wave of funding, had to be spent by December 31st of 2020, so those are done. The ESSER 1 and GEAR 1 go through September of 22. The ESSER 2 go through September of 23, and then the ESSER 3 go through September of 24. So you see as each stimulus bill was done, those spending dates were extended with each wave of funding. Allowable uses for funds, I'm not going to go over the CRF. I left this in the presentation just for informational purposes or for the public who may not have seen the first presentation, but the CRF funds are fully spent, and this would have already come to the board as part of that first presentation. Same thing with GEAR. That's that first wave of funding. It's primarily focused on technology and summer school. And then the ESSER 1 allowable uses, again, this is not new information. This has come to the board before. Where we start to get to new information is with the expansion of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. They called out some specific additional allowable uses for those funds that weren't previously allowable in the first round of ESSER funds. So specifically addressing learning loss, which is obviously a fairly broad category. But then they also pulled in school facility repairs and improvements, as well as inspection, testing, maintenance, repair for indoor air quality, HVAC type of projects. The bottom line, so there's some pretty broad uses, but still any spending within these funds has to specifically align with an allowable use and be identified as a need that's directly linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. And particularly when we start talking about construction and equipment costs, those also require pre-approval from MDE. And there really has to be a strong burden of proof that those projects are somehow addressing a significant need or shortfall in the district that's COVID related, or that is a significant barrier to learning. And then the ESSER 3 funds, like I mentioned, require that extensive needs assessment and stakeholder input process. So again, not going to go through all of these. You can obviously look and read through, but this is really what we've spent our funds on to date. So when we looked at that slide at what we've already incurred, there's a whole lot, and this is by no means all inclusive, but is just kind of a sampling of what we've spent funds on. And obviously a lot of the funds have come in the way of devices, technology, and other learning supports. So those were the learning related expenditures. Then obviously we've also had a lot of safety, health and safety related expenditures, PPE, cleaning, all of those kind of essential to make sure that our staff and students are safe in their spaces. So these are, again, not all inclusive, but a good sampling of what those funds have been spent on. And as far as the remaining priorities for spending, and so a lot of this falls into that obligated column. We have approximately $2.7 million that's offsetting our decline in compensatory revenue for 21-22, which we discussed when the board approved the budget. Then there's the classroom technology project that's being done this summer, and then we also have funds allocated for replacement of classroom furniture. And so again, those are the priorities that were identified by administration, and those funds have been obligated. And then again, 37.8 million remains in that to be determined spending, with the majority of that being ESSER 3, and so we can't finalize any spending plan on that until after that needs assessment. The one thing that as a district and as administration we've been very repetitive in emphasizing is that these funds should not be spent on continuing costs. And so when we've discussed these funds at Finance Committee multiple times since the course of the pandemic as well. And that's something that Finance Committee has strongly emphasized as well. If we start to spend these funds on programs that we intend to be long-term, whether that be positions or resources or other supports, it's just really not sustainable. At some point, that's going to lead to future budget cuts. That a lot of the organizations refer to it as the fiscal cliff. At some point, you're riding along until you run out of money and you're going to fall off of the cliff. And so we really, as a district, have committed to not setting ourselves up for a scenario where we add programs or resources that are really effective and that we want to keep if it's not going to be sustainable. So while we haven't done that full needs assessment, we have received, whether it be from staff or from community, from school board members, or just members of the public, we have received some input as to how we should be spending the remaining funds. So just for informational purposes, we wanted to make the board aware of kind of what's come forward, not that cabinet or anyone has prioritized any of these, but this is just kind of a list of what we've been hearing. So stipends for staff, which would be one-time payments, lowering class sizes, construction costs such as HVAC improvements, or putting towards the Apollo renovation to lower the referendum amount. In terms of learning and teaching, new curriculum or online resources, or professional development. We know that there's a significant need for credit recovery, some extended time programming for students to get them ahead, additional positions, and then just kind of across the board salary increases to the salary schedule. So some of those are obviously one-time costs, which is kind of where we as a district would like to see those funds allocated. Obviously, construction projects are one-time. Some of those operational costs can be one-time, like professional development or extended time and credit recovery. If stipends for staff are proposed as a one-time cost, obviously that wouldn't be a continuing cost. But some of those are clearly ongoing costs. Adding any sort of improvement to a salary schedule is a permanent cost, as well as lowering class sizes. While you can always revert and increase those class sizes later, that becomes, obviously a very challenging thing to try to address. And then there's, a couple things that fall into, could potentially fall into either category. So additional positions could be one time. So if we're adding an additional position to help with contact tracing, or to specifically look at some curriculum alignment or help with credit recovery or things like that, where we intend those to be short-term, that would, when we wouldn't run into the sustainability issue, but certainly there could be potential as we do that needs assessment and we start to get input from stakeholders that we see requests for positions that people would intend to really be a permanent support. So that could be either, and then the same is true with new curriculum. Depending on what we're buying, sometimes that's a one-time cost, but a lot of times there's ongoing renewal costs and replacement costs that we have to make sure that we're considering. So there is no action on this tonight. It's more just to provide the board an update of our roadmap so that you kind of know where we've started, what funds we have available. As we work on assessment, we'll be bringing that summary of information back to the board for another update. And then also for at some point prior to submitting the application, probably in September, bringing forward the proposed spending plan for approval. Are there any questions?
What would be the time frame that if you want board support or board input to how that money should be spent?
So Cabinet is going to start to talk about that whole input process. And so we could certainly have that be at a work session. We could certainly, have that be board members bringing information one-on-one. I think really can maybe determine what the best venue and platform for that would be. But certainly we want to get that information from board members.
So the cabinet will essentially kind of set some priorities, I assume, how they run the district and what would be best use of it, and then run that by us to see what we think?
Correct, because I think as she said earlier, there's a public process that you have to get some public input. From there, we'll be talking to administration, things of that nature, bringing it to cabinet. We'll be talking about it at board finance, and then we'll be talking about it with the chair in terms of what's the best way to incorporate the entire board in that conversation. So
Right.
it's an ongoing, here it comes.
The reason I'm not concerned about it, I just wondered about it, is because we're in contract negotiations right now, and one of those items has to do with staff stipends. And so having some idea about whether or not that might be on the table would be useful. So I assume you will let us know in a timely manner when you want some input from us. Okay, thank you.
Scott?
You mentioned something about a decline in compensatory revenue. What is that involved?
So our compensatory revenue is a component of our state funding that's directly tied to free and reduced lunch applications and free and reduced lunch status. So this last school year, and then also for the coming school year, there were some federal programs and waivers in place that allowed all students to eat for free, regardless of their income. So that is a great opportunity and support for our families. Unfortunately, because there wasn't the need in their eyes to complete the application, we saw a significant decline in the amount of applications that were completed. And so when that happens, our free and reduced percent goes down and we lose that compensatory revenue that's associated with that. So we're, as a district, are assuming that that is a temporary loss of revenue, which is why we're comfortable using the one-time CARES funding to basically support that loss, knowing that when we go back to a regular free and reduced lunch program, those funds we would anticipate coming back to continue funding those positions. And if, for whatever reason, we don't recoup all of that revenue, then at that point, that would be a budget conversation about whether we would need reductions. But we're not anticipating that to be the case. We're anticipating that to be a short-term problem.
Well, we are getting federal money then for feeding the kids.
So we're getting the federal money in the food service fund, but the compensatory revenue is actually general fund revenue that's tied to free and reduced. So it's linked to the free and reduced status, but it's not food service funding. And so the food service funding that we're receiving under the food service program is fine. Our food service fund is healthy and we're not having an issue there. But there is no federal funding that's directly replacing the lost compensatory revenue. Really kind of the message that the legislature sent, because there were bills that proposed to kind of fill that gap and give one-time funding. The message really that came back from the legislature was that you already have this other COVID funding to offset that and to cover that. And so there wasn't any specific appropriation to fill that gap.
Okay, so get the apps in.
Yes, and we have a very, we've been working very diligently and have a lot of strategies collectively as a district to make sure that we're emphasizing that and that we're prioritizing that. So we anticipate while it could still be a problem going into the following year, we're addressing it head on. And so we expect it to not be as big of a loss.
Les?
We report free and reduced lunch at individual schools. My question is are those numbers consistent with the applications, or are those generated in some other way? Do you understand what I mean?
So when you're saying we will publish that a certain school is a certain percentage?
Yes, I'll hear, let's just say Talahi is 56% free and reduced lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Is that number generated from the applications or somewhere else?
No, it's generated from the amount of families who complete the application and qualify out of the total population.
So if no one completed the application, we would report Talahi as zero free and reduced lunch?
So it's not quite as straightforward as that. There is what's called a direct certification program, so which is why we didn't lose all of our compensatory revenue. We saw a much larger decline in the actual applications that were filled out, but we do have a number of our students who qualify if they're already eligible for other state or county assistance programs. Some of that information gets reported directly to the school district, and those students automatically qualify, and the families don't necessarily need to fill out an application. And so there's a lot of variables, but consistently we saw across all sites that decline because we do have a large percentage that do qualify based on the applications and not being directly certified.
But the concern, or not the concern, I guess pride is a very important concept for people. And recognize that's necessary, but if it causes us to lose funding, then it's overall detrimental. And so that's the point of that is maybe legislatively, if there's another way for us to report those needed resources without having to impose upon individual families, it might be useful to try and find another way to do that.
And the legislature actually has had some working groups and some conversation around that. It hasn't made a lot of traction. I think the hangup is that nobody has a better option. And so sometimes when a problem becomes challenging, there's not an easy solution, it just kind of gets put on the back burner. But there has been discussion over the last 3 to 4 years in both with MSBA and my Masville Finance Group and a number of legislators that maybe linking it to free and reduced is not the best or only option. I suspect that what's happened now with the decline in applications being completed, that's going to hopefully bring some new attention to that conversation and it can get brought back to the forefront.
I heard somewhere that the art of politics is delaying a decision until it's no longer relevant. So we might want to look at that. I'm not trying to be negative about that. I just think there's a human component to having to fill out a form and ask for money. And there are some people who simply will not do that.
Absolutely.
They will cut their resources somewhere else. Okay.
Natalie?
I already filled out my form. Yay me. But I wanted to say that because I did it online. I just went into my kids' Schoology or whatever account and, just filled out one for each of them. And so it's already done. So hopefully, and that's what I thought of when I was doing it, like, okay, if you have access to this, which most parents do, because that's how you check your kids' grades, then it takes that stigma away of actually filling it out in front of the teacher. So that's good. And I got a letter from the district, so that's why I did it.
We are doubling down on our outreach and really also trying to emphasize that while the lunch program is a free program, it's not just a free and reduced application. It's an application for educational benefits, technology fees, activities fees, parking fees, all of those kind of other costs are either prorated or waived if you are approved for the applicational benefits. And then there's also some external non-district resources out there with some technology, internet aid and things right now that we're really trying to communicate to families that it's not just about the free and reduced lunch. There's a lot of other benefits that come with that. So hopefully that will help.
All right, thank you. Are we good on that one?
Yes.
Awesome. Another one down. Okay, Monica?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to modify the agenda and to table the discussion for F, G, H, I, and J, which are proposed revised board policies 412, 511, 422, and 502 for next meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and what I'd like to know, are any of these time sensitive?
So Lori's not in, and she is part of the Board
All
Development
right.
Committee, and I am the
Okay.
chair.
Mine are not. Mine are the first two, and mine are not time sensitive.
Okay.
I will say that out loud. They can all wait. No.
Okay.
No, they're time sensitive.
All right. So I have a motion by Monica and a second by Les to table the first readings, and they would be discussion items F, G, H, I, and J. Is there any, or to add it to the agenda for our next agenda, which is, I believe, August 4th, for the first reading?
Correct.
Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, Les, can you call roll?
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold. Yes. Les Green is yes. Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
All right, good idea. All right, so then we are going to jump down to, are you good with that? Okay. Okay, can I keep talking, or, okay, we're going to keep moving here. Okay, then we're jumping down to item K, which is an action item, and it's health dental insurance plan renewals premiums for 2021, 2022, which is being presented tonight by Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations.
Good evening, Chair Hawes, Board Member Superintendent Jett. I'm pleased to give you a report from our Labor Management Committee on our insurance renewal bids for our third-party administrators for health and dental insurance, and then on the committee's rate recommendations for the coming year. And so first, I just want to give the board a brief overview slide of our plans. I think it's important for this board to know that as we compare, sometimes we're asked to compare our contributions to health insurance with other districts, and that's always a complicated thing because the plans vary wildly from district to district, so the contributions or the premiums really are quite dependent on the type of a plan that is offered. And so I'm really happy to say that we have very good coverage in our insurance plans, and have maintained that for all of the years that I've been with the district. And at the time that we do bids for reviews on our plans, it's always an opportunity for the Labor Management Committee to consider whether or not to reduce costs for health insurance by modifying the plan design. Increasing co-pays or increasing the deductibles and those kinds of things. And our LMC has always, I think, really appreciated the benefits that are provided by our plans and have resisted the urge to change the plan design in order just to save costs, because they value ultimately the protection of these plans. So our plans, our single plans, are $2,000 deductible plans with $1,000 pharmacy out-of-pocket max. And the district makes a $1,000 HRA contribution to those single plans to cover a portion of that deductible. And then you'll see on the family plans, we have a $4,000 deductible with a $2,000 pharmacy out-of-pocket max, and then again, a $2,000 HRA contribution to those plans. Our dental plan is pretty standard with a $50 deductible for each year's services, and then $1,000 maximum per plan on those plan designs. The next slide is just, again, for your information, so you get an idea of the amount of money that moves through our self-funded insurance plans. And so this particular slide is prorated because our plan year runs from October 1st of each year through September 30th of each year. And so this isn't the data for the full year because we don't have that data available yet from our consultant who works with us on our self-funded plan. But you can see that, there's over $10 million of projected claims that go through that plan, even in this 9-month period. And it shows you the fixed costs and the funding rates and so on this slide. And I think the takeaway for this particular slide is just, as you can see from the that we're running way below our expected claims. And that has been really since we entered the COVID-19 period, as people's access to their medical care and procedures and things really declined during that time. And we haven't seen a really drastic return to kind of projected rates since that has happened, but we continue to anticipate that there'll be some increase in that. This is a good picture that just, again, gives you a good snapshot of our plan and its funding. And so the green line here is the annualized expected costs of claims for the coming plan year. The purple line is the funding based on the premiums that we collect for all of our plans. What's the funding? And then that orange line is the maximum amount we could be responsible for claims. So if we had a really bad claims year, for whatever reason, that's the maximum amount we could be responsible for as a school district, and anything over that amount would be insured by the third-party administrator, health partners in this case. And so that potential gap between where we're planning to fund for the coming year and that worst-case scenario would be about $668,000, which is relatively insignificant when we move to the next slide and talk about the reserves that we have in our self-funded plan. You can see the black line on this slide represents the target reserve that's recommended. 35% of our annual claims is recommended as a healthy reserve for a self-funded plan. We have been running, ahead of that target significantly in the last 2 years. We started this year with an $8 million reserve, as opposed to about the $5 million that would represent that 35%. And again, that higher reserve at the start of the year was in part due to that lowered claims under COVID. We've seen that continue, so the red line is this year, so we're continuing to build reserves, and at this point have roughly $10 million in reserves in this plan. And so, there's great comfort in that. When we hit kind of a rough spot in terms of our plan about 6 years ago, and we had to make double-digit increases in our premiums for staff and for the district, we had zero reserves. And so because this Labor Management Committee has been very responsible in its recommendations, we've been able to build not only the target reserve in that time, but also, again, mostly due to the performance of the plan over the last 2 years, a very significant reserve in this plan. So as we met at our, yes?
Is there any point where that reserve is, that we stop building it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's partly what we take into consideration as the committee meets each year to think about what are the premiums for the coming year and whether or not we need to recommend increases.
So the question is, would there be a point where the reserve was high enough where we could actually recommend decreases?
I would say, and Digital One is our consultant on that, and George is an amazing, prognosticator in these areas, and he would say probably not. Although we built this significant reserve, most of that excess is due to the way the plan has performed in the last 2 years under COVID. And they really do expect that the cost of claims will catch back up to the way we're funding them. And so they wouldn't recommend that, but it does give us the opportunity at this point to be really conservative in terms of any increases in our premiums.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a few years back, we actually dipped into OPEB funds and pulled dollars from there to help fund this and bring the balance up, so.
And so we know that the cost of medical claims rises each year, just inflationary at 6 to 8%. And so if we can continue to see, single-digit increases in our health insurance with this reserve, we're confident that we keep up to the inflationary costs, but it wouldn't be probably prudent to think about decreasing our funding at this point. So this slide is just summarizing the recommendations from our consultant, and this was the information that was presented to the Labor Management Committee at its last meeting. They really feel comfortable, the consultant, recommending a 0% increase in funding for this coming year, given the significant reserves we have. As we say, with a $10 million reserve fund at this point and the outside exposure at just, about $660,000, we certainly have plenty of reserves to protect us in the next year. And so it's a very good time to say 0% increase in our premiums and in for our members who are our employees. We also did the bid this year, so in addition to kind of setting premiums, which we do every year, we also were in the process of doing our regular bid requirements. And we had bids from 4 different providers, kind of the usual cast of characters, Health Partners and Blue Cross Blue Shield and so on. We were able to negotiate with Health Partners using some of the other bidders' information to get a very responsive bid from them. And so when we got to the last and final bids, the committee, the consultant and the committee both recommended that we stay with Health Partners because we actually have some savings in administrative costs and other things with that final bid. And it avoids that comes with changing a carrier for our employees. So that would be the recommendation in terms of the bidding process. Let's see, let me go to the next slide here. We also, whoops, I missed this on the last slide, sorry. We also did our bidding process on our dental plan. We've been with Delta Dental now for a number of years and have had very good results in that plan. Like the health insurance plan, we maintain a health reserve in that plan, and we've not had to make increases in those premiums for a number of years. And again, we're in a position to be able to continue that trend and continue our dental without changes. Life and disability, we also did the bid, and our optional vision care, we did that bid. And again, the bids came in with holds on all of those rates, and so the committee was very comfortable recommending that we continue with our current providers. So for the recommendations for the board's consideration tonight, the Labor Management Committee is recommending that for our health plan, we remain with Health Partners as our third-party administrator, that there be 0 increase for the coming plan year in our premiums, and we would hold those rates at the premium rate at $775.54 for the single and $1,776.98 for the family plan. Likewise, they're recommending that we remain with Delta Dental for the third-party administrator for our dental plan with 0% increases in both the single and the family insurance at those rates that are provided. And so I'm looking for a motion to approve the recommendations of the Labor Management Committee, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay, the premiums are, they're going to be the same for all the bargaining groups?
The premium is always the same. That's the cost of each of the plans. What differs from group to group is the district contribution to that premium.
Okay.
And that's what we were looking at when we talked about those graphs that we looked at in the previous closed session.
Okay, thank you.
Les?
Second.
That works. Okay, so I have a motion by Les and a second by Al. Any further discussion? Okay, Les, will you please call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz. Oh, sorry, Monica. Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green, yes. Zach Dorholt.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Are we holding this vote or are we moving on? Oh, here she comes.
Monica, it's been moved and seconded that we approve what Tracy said about the health insurance plan and all of its particulars, and I think you heard most of that, and would you?
Yes.
And I'm asking for your vote.
My vote is yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. All right, next up is Superintendent's Report presented by Willie Jett, Superintendent at District 742 Schools.
Good evening, Chair Hawes and members of the board. And so first, from North and Apollo, the community problem solvers. I'd like to offer congratulations to Fatuma Hassan, Quinn Meister, and Nathan Nicholson for taking first place in their category at the International Future Problem Solving and Community Problem Solving Competition. Next, District 742 and the following schools receive PBIS exemplar status. St. Cloud Area School District is also one of 7 school districts to be recognized as a PBIS sustaining exemplar district. The schools are as follows: Coreyview, Westwood, Clearview, Kennedy, and North. Minnesota schools and districts were invited to apply for the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports Recognition System. And the purpose of Minnesota PBIS recognition is to identify and recognize exemplar schools and districts that have completed the PBIS implementation and are continuing to achieve positive student outcomes. These schools and districts are able to demonstrate exemplary status by sustaining school-wide PBIS with fidelity in the current 2021 school year. Next, you had the spring all-metro teams as it related to the St. Cloud Times and other media outlets. And so we'd like to offer congratulations to 39 students from Apollo and Tech for being named to the spring all-metro teams. Sports included track and field, baseball, softball, lacrosse, tennis, and boys and girls first and second golf teams. St. Cloud Times gave special recognition to the following. David Boyd Jr. was the Athlete of the Year for Apollo Track and Field. Faith Miller was the Player of the Year for Tech Lacrosse. And Andrew Plombon was the Player of the Year in Tech Tennis. And when I say in Tech Tennis, in Tech Lacrosse, and for Apollo Track and Field, no, they were the Athlete of the Year for the entire greater St. Cloud community. So when I said Apollo Track and Field, he was on the Apollo Track and Field team. Next, the winner of the Granite City Days 5K race. And so we had a student win this. So Tech High School junior St. Sean Pickle won the Granite City Days 5K race with a time of 18 minutes, 32 seconds. He completed the race ahead of the second place runner by 31 seconds. Nice job, Sean. And last but not least, our Tech students competed at the HOSA International. And so we'd like to say congratulations to Tech senior Brianna Doom, who competed in the Health Occupation Students of America International Leadership Conference. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the standing committee reports. Achievement Integration Equity Committee, Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes, we met yesterday and we talked about the many things that Lori presented today. The end.
And Board Development Policy, Monica Segura Schwartz.
So yes, we met June 22nd and we discussed proposed revised board policies that were in the agenda today, and we'll leave them for discussion next time. We also talk about the retreat for the board, and I asked for topics to board members. I'm going to tell you that I only received 2 answers. I'm going to give you a next opportunity to give me other answers, please. That concludes my report.
Finance Audit Committee.
Committee met on July 8th, and we discussed the different COVID funding that we had in the district, exactly as Amy presented it tonight.
You guys are great at summarizing all this. Appreciate it. Zach Dorholt.
I'll be reaching out to schedule legislative committee meeting here soon.
And personnel negotiations, Les, did you meet?
We did not meet today. We were, the meeting was scheduled today as a virtual meeting, and we can no longer have virtual meetings, and so we couldn't just come and meet. So it's been rescheduled for the 28th, and we will meet then and just do our wonderful business.
Good, thank you. Next, we have future agenda items. Oh, Scott?
Wait a minute, let me make sure it's clarification of what I said. What I said was that we had noticed our meeting as a virtual meeting, and I was told that we could not have a regular meeting because if it's noticed as virtual, it has to be done virtual. Yes, you may. Anybody, I need help.
What he means is that the emergency declaration that allows to break open meeting law that demands that we meet here in person is no longer acting. Correct.
Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you. Okay, next up is future agenda items. Board of Education members may suggest items or topics for future board meeting agendas to the Board Development Policy and Governance Committee. For our August work session topics, we have one item, data literacy.
I may, just to
Yes.
reiterate,
Yes, please.
the closed session meeting somehow facilitated so we can get the information on, just an informational meeting on American Indian education stats.
And you would like to discuss items that we haven't, numbers and statistics because of data privacy, because the numbers are too low. Is that
We
correct?
can't report them publicly because of data privacy, but I just like to have them reported to us. It shouldn't take long.
As long as we have that information and Donna is sitting there in the background, as long as we can get that ready for you by then, we'll go ahead and, for what you're asking, because we were talking earlier about MCA data and that wasn't going to be released until a certain point, until August, beginning of August, mid-August. And so I'm just trying to time that
Let me
with what you're
clarify
for.
what I'm asking.
Okay.
Over the past 7 or 8 years, we have never been given data on American Indian graduation rates and test scores and things of that nature because there weren't enough in the pool. I'd just like to know, based on the information we already have, how does that look over the years? That's all. You don't have to get it right up to date, but just sort of what's it really look like over the years?
And the thought would be that we would have to do that in a closed meeting.
Yes, because we can't report them
Correct.
publicly.
Yes. Okay. Tracy?
So the board could have that informational item on an agenda and have maybe the public data that might be related to that topic presented in the open meeting, and then close the meeting briefly to review the student data that would be private, and then come back into your session.
Okay.
Would be one suggestion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do you need it before the MCA data? So we could wait and do it then, probably. huh? Yeah.
We have never had it, and I would like to.
No, I agree with you. I'm just wondering if you were looking for it like immediately or if it would be okay to wait.
He's been waiting 7 years, so.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You're correct.
Okay. Next up then, we are, after future agenda items, next up is a closed session for labor negotiations strategy and pursuing 13D03 for closed meeting for labor negotiation strategies. We are allowed to close the meeting. This meeting will be recorded, and we will hold on to the recording, and it will be made public after contract negotiations or contracts are signed. So at this point in time, we're going to close the meeting. After this item, when we open back up the meeting, we'll open up the meeting briefly to just officially close. But yeah, we won't retell